Yeah, well, we're here because I threw together a slideshow. This slideshow took me way too long. Honestly, one of the first ideas I had when we initially kind of came up with this idea of a show. But yeah, before further ado, let's get into this. Before we can talk about Dr. Bug and his Capsule Monsters, we need to talk about something that's so simple and complex at the same time, and that, my friends...
Doctors and bugs.
Whoa, time out, Zach. No, we need to talk about nostalgia. Nostalgia is a word, obviously, it's thrown around a lot these days because us being in our 30s, typically anything we were into as a kid has kind of been pushed. And it's not just our generation, it's every generation with media. Things seem to have like a 30-year cycle where what's old is new again, yada, yada, yada. Etymology here. It comes from Greek, nostos meaning homecoming, algos meaning pain. Obviously, homesickness is a good early way you would describe nostalgia. And it makes sense for like Greek literature, like your Homers. All those epics are typically stories where your hero is venturing from home and just trying to get back. And that nostalgia is what's pulling them to their final goal, in a sense.
It's the rose-tinted glasses.
Yeah.
The lens that you view things through, whereas like everyone's nostalgic for their childhood because even though things were bad, like there is this like shelteredness of childhood where like maybe like the things that your parents struggled with you weren't like privy to, and also like just the numbing effect of time comes into play, so that like 30 years ago everything was always better for every generation because we're just 30 years away from it.
What's the line from Watchmen? Like even the bad parts of the past turn golden with time, or something like that. Like obviously, yes, we can get more nuanced with it. Nostalgia can also be a longing of the past that is no longer there. No matter how much you try to indulge in your nostalgia, it's just it's out of reach. You can't revisit that event, that thing in that time place with where you were. It's the pain of that sort of loss.
Not only there, never existed.
Yeah,
would be a good way for, like, to view like nostalgia.
Yeah,
of
it's a falsification of memories in a way.
The memory is so warped that like it's just not true.
Nostalgia, of course, also a medical condition that was in your 1700s and 1800s. Supposedly, over 2,000 soldiers succumbed to nostalgia in like the Civil War, and it killed, quote unquote, 26. Which could mean that somebody unalived themselves from missing home. So the sadness of missing home, or somebody died from a bullet wound. But wait. What they write home is
when we say soldiers unaliving themselves due to nostalgia. I think I know which army they fought for.
I think this is from both sides. I think it's combined of both sides in that sense.
All right.
It was mostly attributed to French soldiers throughout Napoleonic Wars and things like that as well. You can make a lot of nostalgia sells.
Oh yeah,
nostalgia is a hell of a drug, and it sells for a lot of money. And this slideshow, as a whole, somewhat started with a Wikipedia deep dive, as most of mine do. And I'm gonna take you on a condensed version of that real quick. I don't mean to rush things, but there's going to be a whole lot of text coming up, boyos. First off, we're going to start at what's at the bottom of the top grossing media franchises, and we're going to work our way to the top. I found it cute that they had a Neon
Genesis. That's really cute. $2 billion.
Made a lot of money right off the get.
Apparently, yeah. $2 billion right off the bat. Again, you can't quite take these Wikipedia numbers at face value. It doesn't account for, like we have here with Neon Genesis, perfect example. We have TV revenue and we have retail sales, and you assume those retail sales are toys, shirts,
cereal,
lunchboxes, what have you. Spaceballs the flamethrower,
plushies,
yada yada yada. But licensing rights aren't included in this. Not to shoot myself in the foot by showing a bunch of numbers here, but things like Evangelion pachinko machines make a bunch of money, and I assume parlors are buying those machines and in part buying the license, and those numbers aren't reflected on here. There's some other.
It's just the licensing fees of like to get the Evangelion property for your video poker machine.
Yeah, does that count towards the money that the property itself makes? I say yes. Wikipedia says maybe, depending on if there's an actual source there.
I would think
Twilight's a good example with this, because Twilight does not include book sales, which you know damn well that thing sold a couple $100 million in books. So take all these numbers with a grain of salt. A lot of the numbers I'll be using when I present some will be averages. As we move up this board, we see sometimes you can have something like a Grand Theft Auto, where all your money is made in one pool. You make Rockstar makes video games, makes things with the Grand Theft Auto license. Sure, there is probably some retail sales and all that in there, but you're making the majority of your money through the game.
Yeah.
You have things...
Pretty much the river is like just one... The river is
It's one
just
source.
the video
Yeah.
game. It doesn't have a big amount of like estuaries or streams popping
And
off of it.
it's not always the merchandise sales. You have things like James Bond, where you're making most of your money in the theater, and then you're having your dedicated fan base throwing more of that money out for merchandise, DVD sales, yada, yada, yada. Or things like your Lion King, where the majority of your money, your biggest chunk, is coming from a musical show.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
The show.
The show. But yeah.
For like 20 years on Broadway.
Oh, yeah.
They still doing
Yeah,
that?
they're still
really?
doing that. I think there's like multiple ones at any given time. There's the one on Broadway, then I think there's a touring like European one,
And it's
Asia one.
Fucking hard to get tickets for any of them.
Oh yeah. And it reflects on here. That's where you're making a big chunk of your change. Mm-hmm. We keep on moving up. We get more and more franchises that are a little bit older, because as you've had to take a lot of time. I know.
Wow.
All right,
number.
Disney
I know what
princesses.
I know. Okay, that's what this what this asterisk is for, because it basically retroactively Disney Princess as a brand started in 2000, but retroactively includes
All the way to,
everything from Snow White.
1936.
And still, they're only at 45 billion? Whoa.
Well, that's the thing.
I would assume
Numbers
more.
with a grain of salt.
Well,
Where
it couldn't
does-
be too much different from the actuality,
If you-
right? It's not like there's a missing $14 billion somewhere.
Well, yeah.
It's an Eisner's yacht.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
The Eisner yacht. Mm-hmm. What would his boat name be?
Eisner.
Oh,
Eisner.
I feel like it'd be... Yeah.
But said it from Mickey Mouse's voice.
But as you can see, a lot of these franchises, once you climb higher and higher into the billies that you're getting, you kind of have to be around for a while. But as always, there are exceptions that lie.
I mean, Fortnite was in our previous slide, and that shit's only been around for less than 10 years at this point. So.
Absolutely. Some things can just pop off and have a really good year and still make it onto a list like this. Wizarding World, your Harry Potter stuff, is another example of something that came out decades after this stuff, but accumulated so much money in its first couple years.
It has so many factors as well.
Oh, I would consider the success of Harry Potter almost a parallel story to the one we're going to tell today. There's a lot of different parallels that I'm going to pull from. But
Does the creator become a transphobic monster as well?
No.
That does Holocaust revisionism?
No, we aren't. We aren't watching the bad end here. This is a fluffy, light story that we're gonna go through today, and only one death, I promise. Just one.
Hello Kitty, though. Hello Kitty's vein. That's like just merchandising, right? Oh, I guess there's a movie. $61,000 in a movie.
I assume.
Hey, don't forget to note that, guys. Don't forget to put that down there.
It really counts.
Don't forget about my $61,000.
It brings us
honestly-
28.8 to 28.8.
It's more embarrassing to put that than to leave it.
A little bit. But going up this list, it's a fun list on Wikipedia. But as you can see, many sources of streams go into something like your Wizarding World or your Star Wars, where, things might be a little bit uneven, but, oh boy, you're making a big chunk of change from your initial product as well as the merchandising and everything else.
That was the gambit of George Lucas was...
Oh, yeah, he took a $500,000 pay cut from his salary. I think he cut his salary in half for the first Star Wars. And
because he got a percentage on the merchandise.
Yeah, because, again, it will be a parallel story to this. Like, they didn't think merchandise would sell. And
they didn't think the
jokes-
movie would sell, so thus the merchandise wouldn't
They
sell.
didn't understand capitalism.
And some things just work out. As we climb higher and higher into the oxygen tank levels of this, we see the second and third, at least on Wikipedia, and these numbers...
Winifred the Pooh?
I've seen them vary anywhere between your 48...
What? That government name?
Yeah, that's on his social.
Yeah.
Security card.
Yeah.
I forget social can also...
Winifred T. Pooh.
Yeah. Oh, Elias Winifred T. Pooh.
Winifred T. Pooh.
But here we see two Goliaths of money. You can also see that these took almost a century to accumulate that wealth.
Or for Winifred, exactly a century.
Exactly a century, yes.
Yeah. We're right on that $100 bill right now.
And it's also important to note that these aren't, these are media franchises. These aren't like the companies that own them sort of a deal. I mean, if you've been paying attention, there's Walt Disney all the way up, essentially.
Owned about 50%
Right.
of that fucking list.
We even got the
Right, and Winnie the Pooh, just because it became public domain now, so there's going to be like a lot of freelance numbers that get to be added.
Well,
into
an
that.
aspect of Winifred T. Pooh became public domain, but not all of the franchise. It just like same thing with Mickey Mouse. Like only Steamboat Willie.
Yeah, Steamboat Willie entered public domain, but you can't have your...
You can't have a mouse with red shorts and not expect a fucking cease and desist and or a subpoena in the mail. It has to be a black and white mouse.
But,
Might I just say, I love the screenshot of this page, because you said this is number 3 and number 2.
Yeah.
And then if we just look right above
jet livery.
where you could have crossed
Jet aircraft livery.
livery
Something made $3 million in jetcraft livery? Well, what could it be? Could it be the topic of today's episode? Honkin' Pokemon?
Wow.
Pokemon!
$88 billion is very conservative for 2024 standards. I've seen anything upwards of 150 billion. It's a money printing machine.
Video games isn't even on there. It says mobile games
Oh my god.
in the field there, not video games.
Wait, so is that just Pokemon Go then? That's the
yeah,
only mobile
yeah,
game,
Pokemon
right?
Presumably-
Go made
well,
it.
there's Pokemon Sleep.
Yes.
That's another mobile game, but it's not a good one.
No, but if people threw money at it enough to make 6.13
As someone
billion
who's a daily-
conservatively,
Someone who's a daily user of that app, it's not good.
but it exists.
Pokemon Sleep?
Yeah.
But I mean, it
Is it like a real health? Is it a health
it
app?
monitors your sleep.
Kinda.
Is it like the cool band-aids you'd give kids that have like tattoos on them? Just like...
Not even as cool as that. It just kind of monitors your sleep halfway as good as like an Apple Watch does. I really wish they broke that licensed merchandise down a little more granular.
I do too. As we see here, Pokemon, we have it licensed by the Pokemon Company, trademark in Japan. So anything that's bought in Japan goes through that trademark. Those people get money. And it looks like Big Bad Boy Nintendo itself gets pretty much a larger cut of the pie if it's Pokemon sold anywhere in the world.
Yes.
Bring us to Satoshi Tajiri. Who the fuck is Satoshi Tajiri? And how the fuck did he make one of the biggest money printing machines ever known to mankind?
He had a dream.
He saw cockfighting one day, and and he's like, I gotta capitalize on
Let's
this.
meet the man.
Is that an Eraserhead album cover in
That's
the
an
back?
Eraserhead Laserdisc, my friend. Satoshi
Oh my...
Satoshi Tajiri is a David Lynch fan. This photo, we will revisit it near the very
So this is
end
at
of
least
this show.
Gen 2 of Pokemon
No!
when this picture was taken, because I see Ho-Oh in the background.
Wonderful. We're going to get into it. I made a whole slideshow about the history of this.
Okay.
I've dated this picture at somewhere between 1998 and 1999.
I mean, he's got a chunky laptop and a Super Famicom behind him.
He's got a Super Famicom. He's got himself a Super Game Boy attachment. He's playing his own game. He's playing Pokemon Blue in the
shit.
background. He's got a couple
Let
Game
me
Boy
dissect
Pockets.
this room a little bit here.
Yeah.
That is the most adorable little external monitor I've ever seen that he's playing his game on.
This tiny little guy.
This
It's the
8-inch.
most Japanese thing. It's a tiny, fully functional screen hidden in
It
a
looks
cubicle
heavy.
somewhere.
It's
It does look
90s
heavy.
I mean, in the 90s dollars, that was like a $3,500 fucking monitor right
Oh,
there
yeah.
for an 8-inch flat screen.
For just a tiny
And
little
that
boy.
laptop, oh, so chunky.
I know. It looks like he's about ready to like steal some government secrets on this bad boy.
Yeah.
Top of the line Acer laptop that cost $7,000.
At this point in 1998, 1999, he's only about 35. He's come into a bunch of money. He's not only the head game developer, he's the CEO of his own small company of about 10 people, which isn't quite unknown in the game industry. I mean, even in our modern day indie age, you can have one person go out and make a game. Or
That's
you can
great.
have or you can be a larger company with hundreds of people outsourcing different aspects of a product that eventually gets compiled together.
I mean, you got like CD Projekt Red, which is a team of like 15 people that has the same GDP impact on the Polish economy that like Boeing has on the American economy.
But what I find so fascinating about this picture, and it's what the image doesn't tell, but the history tells. Satoshi Tajiri is developing the last game he will ever develop, and he doesn't know it yet.
Oh no! What are you saying?
Within a year of this photo being taken,
are you saying he died?
We'll have to find out as this goes on.
Will he touch grass ever again?
He might have never touched grass.
Is he gonna push up daisies?
One thing you will notice about Satoshi Tajiri
is that he steals my style. Like, that's literally the type of thing I would wear.
He is dad as fuck right now. I think he even has a calculator watch on.
For sure. Brought that salary man fucking influence.
Oh, absolutely.
Without the style.
So let's get into it. Who is Satoshi? Who is our main boy Satoshi here? Our hero, our protagonist of this story. We got to go all the way back to the late 60s, early 70s in Japan. Satoshi is born in somewhat, we would call it a suburb of Tokyo. It's outside. It's still
Inglewood.
It's still in Tokyo Prefecture, but it's far enough on the border where you have a much closer access to like these rural towns and other things that the city hasn't quite touched
You're
yet.
a 35 to 40 minute drive from like the heart of Tokyo.
Yes. So he spends most of his time as a kid. He's
collecting bugs, huh?
He's a bug collector.
Just like Peter Akamoto.
I tried so hard to look up the history of Japanese bug collecting, and it's something where any writing has it in. Like, it's always been there, as far as I'm concerned.
Dude, my cousins had a beetle collection. They had these massive beetles that they had gone and caught in the countryside.
Yeah.
I don't understand it.
Japan benefits from, of course, being an archipelago island chain. Any island chain, your fauna kind of goes a little bit wacky. You have many different types of interesting beetles and other insects and everything else, which could only grow a bug collecting as a hobby. I read about like in your, I think it's in your like 1400s, 1500s, cricket sellers were really popular in your growing cities in Japan because people wanted a taste of the countryside, and nothing was a taste of the countryside other than having a couple crickets that you just keep in your house and like lull you to sleep. That kind of nostalgia.
Wow.
Your 15th century Japanese white noise machine?
Yeah, that's what it is. It's 10 hours of spaceship noises to listen to while you sleep.
So me and the neighbors are thinking about going in on getting a bunch of crickets so we can like have a little bit more of the countryside in our city.
As Satoshi here is growing up, being as close as he is to the main city, your metropolitan area of Tokyo, he's witnessing through the early 70s all this urbanization. All these places that he would go and go down to the creek and catch tadpoles and stuff like that. That creek is gone now. There's a culvert over it because somebody's paving the road and they're putting in, new office buildings, what have you. A train station's coming in, sort of a deal.
They eliminated that pollywag population?
Pollywag's his favorite.
Did they pay Paradise to put up a parking lot?
Yeah. But yeah, he is the bug guy in his school. This is written about in his own autobiographies. There's also a wonderful manga biography that I include clips of in this. It's the dumbest thing I've ever read. It turns Satoshi into a fucking like anime protagonist where he has like rousing speech every chapter, basically, of like, no, gang, we can do it. We're going to make the best game in the world. And it's just like, I was reading this just to get like some facts of what's going on and not the churched up version. But he's so good at collecting bugs that he's like his parents think that like, oh my God, he's going to go to school and be like a biologist or something like that.
An entomologist?
An entomologist.
A bugtologist, yeah.
Yeah, he wants to be Dr. Bug, which it becomes his nickname in elementary school.
Whoa.
Because he would write pamphlets and pass them out to other kids where if you want the rhinoceros beetle that looks like this, it's down at this creek, you know. And also he threw in some like
He's making a Pokedex.
He's making the first Pokedex.
Thank you, Zach. I was going to say it if you didn't.
Yeah, he's also throwing in little secrets and other things where it's like, oh, these beetles only come out at night in this area, but you can find them sleeping in this forest, you know, yada, yada. He's making a full-on Pokedex at the age of 6, 7, 8 sort of a deal.
This is the best bait to lure this bug.
Oh my gosh.
But he would make
You have
a
to
little...
beat this guy up so you can catch rock stuff.
Yeah, you gotta beat up Steve. Steve the biker.
It's
Like the
so...
bike.
Dr. Bug here is somewhat heartbroken by this urbanization because he spent so much of his time in elementary school and all that, you know, cataloging these bugs, thinking about bugs, drawing bugs, making booklets, selling booklets to other kids, and suddenly they can't go to half the places he's written about.
So,
Oh my
Pokemon
gosh. This is even becoming more full picture. Where it's like he's making a story about like Team Rocket. Where Team Rocket's coming in and polluting certain areas.
Everything's going to tie back to nostalgia. He's eventually going to make something to recreate those creeks and woodlands and everything else that he lost out on as a kid.
It's his Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying when you started off saying that we're living nostalgia through his nostalgia, where the game of Pokemon is established by his desire to go back in time and live in that glorious moment.
Yeah, Pokemon was made by him, really only for him.
Yeah.
In essence, is what I'm trying to...
A strong tradition in Japanese game making.
Yeah. Which, I mean, produces great stuff. You get a lot of great artworks that way. But, you know how kids go. Once you can't have one hobby, you kind of have to jump onto another one real quick. And when you know the 70s is just a prime time for the arcade scene. It's booming 70s in Japan, between companies like Namco coming out with a Pac-Man and you have Space Invaders. You have Atari, the American company, also bringing over their Pongs and their Asteroid, all that other shit.
Japan between 1945-ish to like this era. I'd love to know the story of like how fast they develop into this economic like digital powerhouse.
Extremely rapid.
It's the kind of thing where no matter what angle you look at it, it's like, how the fuck did they do this in like 30 years?
Dude, and not just like their willingness to do it, but like technologically their adaptation to the time. Because, I mean, electricity has only been around for so long, and like high-speed rail has only been around for so long, yet Japan has seemed to capitalize so rapidly and fast on these advances in human technology.
China 1.0.
Yeah.
I mean, the Americans wrote the Japanese Constitution post World War II, and as a way to counterbalance the power that American labor unions had, a lot of people moved manufacturing overseas from the U.S. to Japan. So all of that IP moves into
that work, that industry
Japan.
is coming in whether you want it or not, but it takes, some places like Japan take to it and grow their own, in a sense.
It's our field test for what would become the 80s and 90s, and now what we see in China in present day.
Mm-hmm. Friendship ended with bug collecting. Now video games are my best friend.
Great chapter of the book. I love it.
Yeah.
Why stop at video games? Why not go all the way back to the first game with stick and a wheel or whatever it was called?
Rock and Head.
Yeah, it was called War, Zach. It was called It was called Pre-Civilization War.
It's called Don't Get Killed.
But Dr. Bug is doing the same shit that he did with Bugs. He immediately gets hooked on going to parlors with arcade machines, trying to figure out games, getting excited about new games. Basically starts writing guides and tips and tricks, and here's what you can do to get 100,000 points in Pac-Man, and yada yada yada. And he's, again, we have here in the upper right, this is
Dig Dug.
This is his first zine, and he's giving out Dig Dug chips.
Hell yeah!
Wow.
But yeah, it was a new media market. Japan's always loved sort of an arcade parlor, with whether it be pachinko, anything else,
Or even just games parlor.
Yeah,
like
games
a
parlor in
Mahjong
general.
and Go parlor.
It was something where as opposed to American arcades, which were sort of nothing really, you would have like you would have your penny arcades where you could go and maybe see a movie, and maybe there was some sort of oddity there that you could see. Japanese arcades just translated, we're going to make a pachinko games parlor but for kids.
I
And
imagine
it was super easy translation.
the
Kid
American
casino,
arcade
yeah.
evolved out of like, hey, we're bringing the carnival games to you, and it stays put. So it's like a place where you can constantly get those like parlor games from your local carnival. Whereas, Japan, through its rapid development, like completely bypassed that phase and brought in like the video poker.
As with
pachinko.
most things in history, Japan seems to like skip to chapter 4 sometimes and start reading the book there, and it just works out.
Yeah.
Somehow.
They go from horse and carriage to like, hey, we got cars now, from a guy who makes cloth weaving machines.
Is this a Japan podcast?
I think it might be.
Is
And
it?
I think I got really close with Chan-Ho Park.
You
Because
did.
I just missed it. But I do have a couple Japanese players in my back pocket I've been thinking about.
Enough real life bleeds through. This is a weeb podcast.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
we're weebs.
we're all weebs and different. We're the trifecta of weebs.
Yeah.
We're sorcerer, rogue, wizard, and weebs.
So with these books, are we saying that? I mean, are we saying is it history's written that he was so good at these games that he knew that he figured out these cheats and stuff, or is it like he was around
So
the arcade
obsessive.
long enough that he found out secrets and tricks from others?
I'm a realist. I think I think the latter of those two. But any autobiography or the biographical manga that places him out to be a hero, he's the best at games. He's so good. He's good at figuring out what games are going to be the new hot thing, and writes a guide for him. Where to treat the man like a man, like
Yeah.
And a couple arcades are starting to pop up around him with this urbanization, and he's spending more and more time there. All this time that he would be spending out touching grass, he's now sitting in.
He's popping 500 yen
Touching
coins into these
joysticks.
machines.
he's just touching joysticks and really trying to find that hole that is in his heart and find that niche to fill, because in his heart he's sort of. He's the actually guy. He's the guy who would, oh, didn't you know if you don't get the cherry in Pac-Man, like these two ghosts don't chase you right away, sort of yada, yada, yada. Because at this time, again, we're children of the 90s. We're used to strategy guides being for everything, even in a pre-internet society.
Yeah.
At this point, especially in Japan, there's nobody officially publishing. You have game magazines that will advertise what you can go play at the arcade, but how to play it, they're a lot more hands off about.
This is
that.
Nintendo power, but while Nintendo's still making playing cards.
Yeah. Not only does he love playing games, writing, strategy guides, other things like that, he's writing into local gaming magazines and, giving his 2 cents. He also has dreams of maybe making a game one day. Because, when you're a kid and you have those big dreams, why not? I want to make something I love. So he starts entering a bunch of, game idea competitions. He's not getting much luck with it. But what he does, because, again, Dr. Bug is a curious kid. He will always kind of look towards what won the competition, and what stands out there that I want to try to implement maybe in the next one, steal somebody's thunder, right? Their coattails. But he comes up with this weird overall theory about game design, even at this young age, where all games are essentially verbs.
Okay.
He was like, what if it could be in the third dimension?
Well, no, he's like, what do you do in Pac-Man? Like, you eat the pellets. Yeah, or run. You know, you can describe it as just sort of unaction. What does Mario do? Everything's jumping. Everything has to do with jumping.
This ties in with like Atari at the time, where most of the games are just a verb. Golf.
Yeah.
Adventure.
Yeah. Yes. It's easier at this time, but you know, he's trying to break it down with these other like winning game pitches that beat him out. You know, and one of them was like a game that dealt with revolving doors. So he's just kind of like, oh, revolve's a cool verb that I can't think of a game. You know, or X, Y, and Z. He eventually settles on springing.
Okay.
Kind of like a slinky style of movement that he pitches towards Sega. And in his early high school days, this is him up here in a time before pixels in the top left. This is him next to one of the presidents of Sega holding his like $150 US check.
Some salary man who doesn't even know what a video game is. He just knows that it makes money.
But yeah, no, he wins. He gets a little bit of recognition and gets kind of, hey, keep at it, kid. You'll go far places. But it's just enough of like the positive reinforcement he needs to stick with it. Because at this point, especially in high school, his parent, I believe he comes from a blue collar family. Like his father worked at Nissan as like a plant worker and all that. And they're like, you could go off and do. You're smart, Satoshi. You can go off and do anything. You could be a doctor. You could be a biologist. You could study computers.
You could be an engineer at Nissan.
Yeah, exactly. But instead, you're kind of hyper fixated on games, and that's great. We're gonna do our best to support you, but we don't. We don't think it's a viable career path.
Have a fallback plan.
But once
classic parents.
And it's not the only game competition he wins. He wins a couple right around this time in high school, but it's enough of that positive reinforcement where he kind of goes like, okay, maybe this is something I can pursue.
I mean, this is also definitely the Wild West of video game production.
Oh, absolutely.
Where, like, truly, yes, like, children and, like, high schoolers and, like, anyone was, like, just up in the guts of, like, game development.
Oh, yeah.
At the time. Like, this is the era where, like, anyone.
If you had access to, like, an Apple II or some contemporary computer of around that time, and you had access to a motherboard of an arcade cabinet, you can kind of reverse engineer and figure out how to make a game from there.
Oh, and just
learn programming and all that other
stuff. It's also just like it's a brand new field of an industry where, there's not a pre-established tradition of like what education level you need to have, or what level of experience you need to have.
Yeah,
like it's just anyone can who has enough self-taught know-how and the vision can get right up in the mix of things.
So I believe he had 1 year in a normal regular high school, and then his last 2 years in high school in Japan were at more of a technical computer programming minded school.
Video game high school.
He went to video game high school, but it was something he didn't pursue after college.
Probably
a vocational school.
Accounting software high school, but it's giving you enough of like the rubric of
Mavis Speak in high school.
Computer programming that you're able to like extrapolate towards your hobby.
But game development and all that, especially in this Wild West era, takes money. And it takes time, and he kind of has neither. So while he's still going through high school, he's self-publishing all these gaming zines, trying to get writers' gigs for different magazines still, as he becomes established. Goes under the pen name Game Freak, which will be the name of his company that he runs. That's still running today and sits on top of a giant Sauron's Tower of money. But in this process of making
what is the Game Freak logo, guys?
Oh, I thought it was an I for the longest time, but it's a G.
Me too.
Oh.
It's a sideways G.
I'd always perceived it as like a hypnotic pattern or like a portal.
Yeah, but no, it's just a sideways G. Okay. We see even in the image below it, we see sometimes his logos are in English, sometimes he does them in kanji. It's just sort of whatever he's feeling that day. But as he gets to publishing more and more of these magazines,
those massive fucking floppy disks that we're seeing there in cellophane.
No, those are the zines.
Oh, okay.
Those
This is
are
Game Freak's magazine.
Those are Game Freak magazines.
Okay.
As he starts publishing more and getting like arcades to like, hey, we're gonna buy a stock of 25 of these, yada yada. Wouldn't you know it? Somebody picks up one of these magazines and goes, "The art is fucking terrible. I can do better." So we enter Ken Sugimori into the picture up here in the top right.
Deep in contemplation.
This guy here basically sends some fan art that's making fun of Satoshi's art in the book. And Satoshi goes, well, do you want to just join in and do the art for my books? And lo and behold, a friendship, a business partner, and somebody else who will ride with Satoshi to the top the entire way, even into present day, gets his start in the gaming industry just by making fun of somebody.
Hey, I mean, there's two ways you could go about it. You can go either nuclear and freak out, or you can, try and form a partnership. Satoshi takes criticism, at least at this point in his life. Well,
yeah, I would have been motherfucking that dude. I would have been like, this kid, dude, talking about my art, my
But the partnership only improved. It was something. Satoshi is a hard person to read. By this point, we are right around like 81, 82 or so. And as we move into 1983, Nintendo surprises everybody in Japan by releasing a gaming console that's not a heaping piece of shit. That's worth the dollars that you're spending for it, which was something that they weren't getting from their Atari consoles coming over, or even their early PCs and all that. It was all very spotty at best. Maybe you get yourself a gaming computer that hooks up to your TV, and they only make games for it for about a year and a half before the next one comes out, and it's. Cool. You can type up letters because it's a computer.
You can play Zork on it.
The Famicom from Nintendo comes out, and this thing is a game changer. Not only is it something that can play games, it has multiple add-ons that come out almost immediately on its release in Japan, which basically just turn it into a computer. You have floppy disk drives that come with it, other things like that. Whole sound recording equipment as well.
Whoa.
It was versatile. It was a computer that just happened to play games. We would know it as the NES here in America because America around this time in 1983 is going through a giant video game crash, and nobody wants to come out with a new console. They just Atari went down in value. I think they lost 90% of their value between an 81 and an 83.
It was so bad that their founders left, or one of their founders, or multiple, left and made Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah,
at that time.
It's a story for a different day, but it is interesting in how it plays into this, because Nintendo, when they come out with the Famicom, they go, if it sells, this is going to be a Japanese only thing. American markets don't want another video game console right now, let alone one from this foreign land of Japan.
It's going to be an uphill struggle.
Yeah, so we're just gonna not worry about an American release, and they eventually get to it, I believe, 85, 86.
Yes, yeah, 85 is when
85.
When the Nintendo Entertainment System comes to America.
But it was called the Family Computer in Japan.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then there were what?
And it's the same box, the same inner workings, but they just threw on a different cover on it, which was the
floppy
cover
lid.
Yeah, to make it look more like a VHS piece of audio equipment, because the NES box style was the same style they used for their audio recording equipment add-on for the Famicom. It was very sleek, gray, boxy, industrial kind of look. So this thing drops, sells gangbusters. It was a gamble that Nintendo took, and it was a gamble that almost immediately paid off for them. A lot of people buy this. A lot of people get a renewed interest in now you can have the arcade experience at home. You can play all these big, bright, colorful games. New gaming magazines pop up, which is so great for somebody like Dr. Bug here, because now... Because he's only a publisher. He wants to design games. Immediately once the Famicom comes out, Satoshi's, I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to give game design a shot. I've got an artist friend. Maybe we'll find some more programming people. We'll find something to put together. and they run in immediately to their first hurdle, and that is money.
Yeah.
To develop
Time
a game.
is a flat circle that never stops, does it?
Wow. Wouldn't you know it, if you want to design a game for the Famicom with Nintendo at this time, it is a very costly process to get not only a dev kit from Nintendo, but also to go directly through them when it comes to how you're getting the money to keep employees to make a game, your time restraints. Usually, even in this early era of the Famicom, Nintendo kind of set up 2 tiers of how a game's made. You either spend 2 years on a AAA game that you bank everything on. It's your tentpole game. It's your Super Mario's, it's your Zeldas, all that. Or you have 6 months. Throw something together. Give us a Batman '89 game, sort of a deal. Like,
you're either making Super Mario Brothers or you're making Doki Doki Panic.
Yes. Which again, that was a AAA. That was considered a AAA game at the time.
Here in America, yeah.
even there in Japan, yeah, it was considered like, here's a bright, colorful, fun game with many different features. Or you just have Golf 1984, which is we took some source code we had, and you got 6 months to slap something together. Or sports games are like that. You change the names. Mm-hmm. We're in an era where nobody looks like the player they are. Just change the text and call it a new game.
Yeah, you don't know who Bo Jackson is when he's 8-bit.
No.
You don't got to be that accurate.
So Satoshi and some of his programming like-minded friends just kind of go, they disassemble a Famicom, and they find out that one of the main motherboard and chips that are on the Famicom at this time in the version that they have is also fairly close to one in an Apple II Japanese computer. So they fandangle their own dev kit and start playing around, taking assets from games, seeing what they can do, self-teaching all of themselves, basically programming around this time. And they catch the eye of somebody named Ishihara, who I don't know how he came into money. He will eventually be a game producer, but at this point, it's before his game producing time. But he's probably scoping out new talent and everything, and goes, if you kids want some money to make a game, you can kind of go through me. I'll act as producer. I'll make sure you get paid. I'll try to be like your middleman to a Nintendo or something like that.
He was an investor.
More of an investor type, yeah.
Not Yakuza whatsoever, maybe.
Probably not Yakuza. He
didn't get that money running a soap plant.
We can be the judge. We can see him.
Right.
Well, we can judge that book on its cover.
If I see a badge on his lapel, I know it immediately.
He's going to have a boss fight. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Ishihara creates the company Creatures Inc., which was formerly Ape. They didn't develop too much other than your cult classic Earthbound and Mother games, but they also, and that's much later than this in the story, but they made like Monopoly for the NES.
Hey, I mean,
they're taking the checks that they can get to just make something simple, non-flashy and everything else, but, Ishihara, whether it's part of Creatures or outside, because he sometimes helped produce games that had no part in the company that he was running at the time, just kind of is their money man. So we end up with our 4 Beatles, essentially.
Whoa.
Our four boys. We have Dr. Bug up in the top left. We have Ken, who makes art, in the bottom left. We have Ishihara. No, I don't know. We don't see all of his collar, but he might not have a pen as their businessman.
He might have taken it off.
just for this photo.
And we have Herman Lee from Dragon Force. The top right corner.
That's Masuda. At the time when he comes in, he is the only one that officially went to college for computer programming, anything like that. But
he's the nerd.
You would think he's the nerd, but he has shied away from the programming aspect and really got into making music for games. He's a composer.
This is the beautiful boy that that composed those sweet, sweet numbers. I spent so much time underneath the covers, hiding my Game Boy from my mom. Listening, just barely hearing those sweet sounds.
Every single track that you think of, every single earworm you think of in Pokemon games from 1996 up until about 2013.
So X and Y
is him. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Most of the tracks. Some people come on and do other tracks, of course, but all the
Yeah,
like,
they feature some artists. Daft Punk did one.
Yeah, he does
Trent
a lot.
Reznor did some.
Like battle music. I think in his later career, he just kind of was like, "Yep, I got to make 5 battle themes, and here we go: gym leader, regular trainer, somebody special, rival."
I'm just cashing checks at this point.
So with these 4, with their powers combined, they go, "Okay, we got some money from Ishihara. We got a composer who knows some programming. We've self-taught ourselves some programming. Okay, let's make some assets. Let's try to get a game out as soon as we can." And mind you, this is like 1985 or so. And it's a process. There are many stumbles on the road to making anything. I know in this podcast and outside, I've told you both, it's a surprise that any movie is made ever.
Yeah.
Any movie gets finished, but you can extend that to any creative endeavor. There are so many things that have to work out right for an idea to turn into a solid finished thing.
Especially in this days, like video games are nowhere near the money of like a Hollywood movie at the time, which was still like each one is its own little miracle.
And the
like,
distribution of games at that point too. It's not like they had digital downloads where you just, as long as you were on the internet, you could find my game. This is you had to have a cartridge. You had to have a tangible thing made and distributed.
You have to physically go as a representative of your game to many different stores and be like, "Will you buy 25 copies of whatever I'm making?"
Apple just had a movie that was a big success on this last year.
I know. So they start throwing spaghetti at the wall. What kind of game are we going to make? Satoshi sticks true to his all games are verbs. Even if we're making something for the Famicom, as it's now 2, 3, 4 years old, has an American release already and is established, like, okay, let's not shoot for the fences. Let's make something that we can finish and send out. And we got this wonderful little image from the fucking manga where, Dig Dug digs and Pac-Man eats. And if our verb is catch, we can draw curtains right now. But we won't.
Okay.
We won't, because in 1989 they make a game called Quinty, or as it's known in America, Mendel's Palace.
Memory. By the looks of it, it's a memory game.
You would think it's a memory game. It's a single screen, very arcadey NES game. You control your little guy with the pink hair, and you move around the board, and you basically flip tiles over. Flipping is the verb he chooses this time.
Are you trying to match pairs?
You're not trying to match pairs.
Okay.
You are flipping and creating essentially a labyrinth and traps for the NPCs, enemies, or whatever that are also going around the game stage.
Okay.
So it's just a super simple arcadey, get the high score, tons of stages, not much of a story. You finish 3 stages and you'll get a little text box. It's just kind of like the village is safe and now you got to move on to the castle, and it's the same gameplay throughout the entire step. Quinty comes out, and again, we're at 1989. We are 6 years after the NES has released. There's already going to be a Super Nintendo in 2 years from now. Mm-hmm. This is coming in at what many would consider at the time the tail end of the NES. Being sort of your big thing. And they come out with what I could only call the most retro piece of shit I've ever seen. It's a one-screen arcade game. There's not a whole lot to it. There's not a whole lot of magic there.
I mean, this is the same period of time that Dr. Mario's fucking sweeping America.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Simple sells.
Yeah.
Especially
the plumber?
Yeah, no, he's a doctor now.
And he has a version of Tetris that Nintendo started making before they got the licensing rights to Tetris.
But Quinty is a Namco game. Eventually, in U.S. and Europe, it got released under Hudson Soft. None of that really matters. But that's just sort of the tangled web where when you're trying to distribute a game at this time, you've got to jump through so many hoops and try to find which company is going to put forth the money to get that game onto shelves, if it even sells after that.
Once again, Apple made okay movie about this.
No, I love the Tetris movie. We're getting there, Taylor.
Yeah.
We're getting there. But Quinty sells okay. It sells about 200,000 copies overall. In its first year or two. It sells 80,000 copies in the US, which is kind of surprising for a cutesy game like this. We see the classic Americanification of like when it was
punk
released
rocker.
as Quinty, it's a cute anime boy with the fighting things, and oh my god, we gotta cool it up for America. You're fighting, I don't know, the fucking Big Show over here, some punk.
You got an early Frylock, the bottom left corner.
We got Chucky with a hat.
Yeah, this is
This is
very
very
much
Garbage Pail Kids
Yeah.
style art.
It could have been also an advanced Dungeons and Dragons adventure module.
Oh yeah, but I mean, this was commonplace during the time because outside of like a speed racer, Japanese content didn't really sell too well, and too cutesy, too Japanese.
Not enough weebs landside.
No, we're about a decade out from like the dawning of the weebs.
Yeah,
We're-
the
we're-
rising weeb.
We're a decade away from Dragon Ball and Sailor Moon.
Yeah.
Basically.
Half a decade, really. Half a decade
Yeah.
from those really coming out, and then it becoming less and less niche as the 90s go on.
Well, and now we're at this point 2 generations removed from like, those are the people who bombed Pearl Harbor.
Yes. I don't know
Yeah.
if that's yeah.
Racism plays
Well,
a big
look
part.
at us being the generation that is not. Those are the people that did 9/11, right? Like we have an open acceptance of a whole other culture, but an older generation still has like the racism of them because of something that they went through, right?
It's all
I can imagine the Pearl Harbor. Would that be the? That wouldn't be the baby boomers because that would be their parents, right?
It would be the baby boomers, effectively, because that did get instilled in
yeah
them
through
by,
osmosis
right.
and all that.
by the greatest generation.
Yeah.
Or the silent generation.
But there's in your biopic that you could have of good old Dr. Bug here. He gets to America. I think it's his first time in America. He gets a rental car and basically drives up and down the West Coast to different like Toys R Us's and KB's and just kind of like, hi, I have this really weird game. I know it's just a bunch of bubbles and a guy with a fry head, but please, can you...
Probably did it like Colonel Sanders style when he was trying to sell the concept of KFC. Just
Yeah.
like had a TV and a Famicom in the back of his fucking
Yep,
car
yep.
and just drove around. Anyone who would like listen, he'd plug it in and like, hey, play it for 5 minutes.
Because, at this point, it's not a boom boom big hit, but it's a big enough hit to where, okay, it's getting an American release. Let's see who will buy it, and maybe we're going to eat some costs in this. But I've got my foot in the door. Me and my other 3 Beatles here have gotten our foot in the door, and we've got something that we can put on a resume and say, we made a game. Please hire us.
America's very hungry for games at this time. I mean,
Of course.
Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt sold like fucking gangbusters and moved NES units, and now you're a few years removed from that, and like people are looking for like, well, what's something else I can put in this fucking
Oh, exactly.
box?
And we will get to that, especially with the next slide, because we need to talk about one of the best-selling pieces of entertainment ever created, and that's the Game Boy.
Oh yeah, baby.
This bad boy sold like hotcakes. Japan now realizing like, well, that 2-year delay in the NES was kind of worth it. We didn't enter the US market at a bad time, but Game Boy everywhere is getting like all within 2 months of 1989. Game Boy's getting released, usually getting released in its original box. It's released with a Game Link cable, and a copy of Tetris. And that's how they sold it. Price point was great for that bundle. I think it was less than a Famicom at the time, and less than some of the other, I think TurboGrafx 16s and all that were kind of out at the time. And also the gimmick of you can take your gaming anywhere with you.
It's brilliant.
There's also
It's revolutionary.
It is, but also so many steps back at the same time, because even in 1989, we're getting used to colorful, fast-paced games that really push things like the NES to its limits at this point. And you're going back to 1983 technology, but even less, because you don't have color. Your processor isn't good. You can't throw as much stuff on the screen without the Game Boy really starting to choke. Sound, you only have like 4 channels, so even if you're used to like, oh, the Batman
It's big too.
It's
That
a
first
big,
gen was a big boy.
I almost drug one out to show you on camera. I mean, it's 4 AA's. Like, it's
4.
4.
We also have a secret villain in this slide for some of Zach episodes.
Shigeru Miyamoto?
Yeah.
Or are we talking about
Villain.
the Iraqi army that created this Game Boy down here in the bottom right?
Actually, yes, sir.
I'm not talking about Shigeru Miyamoto. I'm
Actually,
talking
the Russian government for owning the rights to Tetris because it was under a communist regime at the time.
Yeah.
Actually, that was Ghislaine Maxwell's dad who owned the rights to Tetris.
For real? Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
This world gets smaller and shittier every damn day.
There's a man who is not pictured here, but is very tantamount to the success of the Game Boy, particularly here in America, and is a villain if you're a Seattle Mariners fan. And that man's name is Howard Lincoln, who was a Nintendo North America executive at the time of the development of the Game Boy. And that's actually kind of what like made his name in the Nintendo Corporation.
Interesting.
And because he was like the Nintendo North America guy, when Nintendo bought a large portion of the Seattle Mariners baseball team, they needed a guy that they could trust to manage business operations for that
so they
franchise.
pointed to this piece of shit
And
went
so
like, yep,
the
Howard,
Mariners
come on in.
They looked under the couch. They saw a used condom and Howard Lincoln. And
They used
picked
one
Howard.
of the drain witches, and he came out of the fucking tub.
And as Zach or many other of our friends could explain much better than me, you know, the team had to wallow in mediocrity for 2 decades under his oversight.
Moving on to the Game Boy.
Ain't it great? Ain't it great having the games on the go? When I think of the link cable, I only ever used it for Pokemon.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Even in later releases of the Game Boy, because I think the one that I have now, my folks got that was packaged with Link's Awakening at the time, but it was just Game Boy and game. No link cable with it. No anything extra.
I had the Game Boy Color Link's Awakening DX, and just the game and the console. No
We'll see a Costco blister pack before the slideshow's done, and we get to have that nostalgia of shopping.
Kirkland ain't far from Redmond, so it makes sense that they have a beautiful
double
partnership. That I'm doxing Costco and Nintendo. 2 massively publicly traded corporations.
Taylor just
Shocking.
can't stop doxing.
And my
He's a
dad,
dog freak, dude.
and my dad 40 years ago.
Call him
no.
Doxter Mario over here.
Call me Doxter Bug.
Doxter disrespect, am I right?
Jesus.
Hey.
Hey. Well, that's gonna date this.
I've never brought a camera into a bathroom.
Jesus H. Christ. Moving right along, we all know who Shigeru Miyamoto is, right?
The guy.
I love Shakira.
Shakira Miyamoto. His hips do lie.
I don't think
Just a
their
little
hips
bit.
move, from what I've seen in many Nintendo Directs.
And my
I don't
hips
think.
don't move.
Yeah.
But yeah, Miyamoto, you get basically he's the wonder kid of Nintendo in their arcade era before they move into home console. He's creating cheap arcade games for them that are doing much better than expected, and then finally you get his hits with like Donkey Kong and your Mario Bros. Arcade, and he's become sort of their rock star developer at such a quick pace that he's now, at this point in 1989, he doesn't become president of Nintendo until 2015. But he is sort of their rock star face,
He is Nintendo.
Figurehead. If he wants to get something developed, he already has the clout to get a money and team behind him on that.
He's the Golden Boy Kingmaker.
Yeah.
Within Nintendo.
Oh, Kingmaker's a great term for him because that's all he did for his entire career. He's not a big star in this, but he does pop up a couple different times, but I at least wanted to establish him now, just in case either you didn't know, because he is sort of like, when you look up video games in the dictionary, it's usually this goofy grin. But yeah, the Game Boy, it's great. It's wonderful. Link cable, I've only used it for Pokemon, but apparently so many, from your Tetris all the way up through like sports games and everything, usually had like a 2-player mode. It was a great gimmick for the Game Boy. But something that it was almost an afterthought most of the time, even though it's something that only the Game Boy could do.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the release games for the Game Boy that really tickled the Game Freak offices, like just really tickled their fancy, was Final Fantasy Legend.
Okay.
Final Fantasy Legend is a watered-down Final Fantasy game on the Game Boy. And to them, it really proved that while the Game Boy can't handle a lot of like action or anything else like that, you can make some tiles. You can write 500 pages of dialogue that like NPCs say and just have a battle system, and it's fun. You get 60 hours of content off of a Game Boy game. They thought it really, pushed what the console could do to its limits. Because you have to remember, in 1989, these are just a bunch of nerds. These are just a bunch of nerds that are in a publishing company that have one game under their belt at this point and still, throwing out game reviews to essentially keep the lights on in their place.
The zine keeps the lights on, yeah.
Yeah, around this time they publish a zine that sells like upwards of 20,000 copies. That's like how to get a bajillion points on this one game, and apparently it was
how to reach the post-credits like invisible Tetris.
But yeah, they're playing a shit ton of RPGs because they're a whole bunch of big nerds. It's not Final Fantasy Legend, but it's one of the Dragon Quest games. And you know how like boss enemies have like a 5% drop of like the magic sword if once you defeat them. Well, Satoshi's a little bit bummed out because that boss didn't drop the sword for him. But when you know it, Ken somehow glitched out and got 2 copies of the sword. And they went, oh, wouldn't that be great if you could just trade an item from your game to my game?
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And then they go, oh, the Game Boy could do that. Even from here, you see the wheels starting to turn. You know the image that Satoshi has.
How can we create more assets to trade between these two consoles?
What can we trade between a Game Boy? And we're jumping a little bit ahead here, but this is the image that pops in his head. What if I have a bunch of creatures?
Yikes.
This is a yikes quote.
Wow, dude. Wow, dude.
This is a yikes. This is why I included clips from the manga, because it's like, oh boy, I get what you're saying, but how you're saying it's not coming off the right way.
That's some awkward wording. That's some spicy awkward wording.
A country that doesn't have to deal with the specter of slavery in its foundation definitely can publish something like that without that immediate visceral reaction that we all have.
Oh, believe me, when I came to this page in the biography, I went, that's going in the slideshow. that got a chuckle out of me for a good couple minutes. I'm just like, wow. But no, this is what he imagined. What if you could trade your RPG party members in between games, in essence? It's the entire Inception. Pokemon's verb is not so much catch as it is trade.
Mm-hmm.
Or collect.
And we're starting with the Tentacruel, we got a Grimer, we got a Blastoise, a Pinsir, a Geodude.
That is a way thinner cable than I remember
it
being.
I remember being heavy and bulky.
But yeah, that's a skinny wire.
Well, those are 2 Game Boy Colors as well. That are.
Oh, you're right.
They're actually Game Boy Pockets.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. I was willing to admit that like they could be pockets.
It's okay.
Let me get my timeline right. Game Boy comes out, right?
1989.
I'm just coming out with Game Boy generation. So you have Game Boy comes out, then you have the Game Boy Pocket, and then you have the Game Boy Pocket with the light on it.
Japan
and then you have
only,
the Game Boy Color.
Yes, in that order. And your Game Boy's 89, your Pocket's 96, your light and your color both come out in 98.
And your camera and printer as well, around
which
that
I had.
time.
You guys, I used to have that. It was so sick.
Creatures Inc., one of the things that they did end up developing outside of Pokemon and, a Monopoly game is they were one of the forefront people of the Game Boy printer and camera and all that.
Makes sense that they would buy into that peripheral.
Yeah. So we're going to get into something that I think of as a fucking Indiana Jones, just like it's the golden idol. It's the treasure. It's something I had not even thought could have existed online until now. And that is the original 1990 Capsule Monsters pitch.
Oh my.
We are going to go through
Look at us.
we are going to go through some of the aspects of this. I've included some screenshots of the finished game just for comparison throughout all this. But typically, if you see anything that's really, really pixelated, pen on paper, it's that 1990s pitch, baby. And
Looks very much like a Akira Toriyama.
yeah.
Got like a weird version of Charmeleon versus a weird version of like maybe an Arbok or a Dragonite.
Oh boy, are we in for an entire fun time here. It's important to note that when this pitch is made to Nintendo, it's not Satoshi himself. It's nobody from Game Freak. It's Satoshi and Game Freak put together.
It's the hottest girl they've ever seen in their life.
Oh, that would have helped.
The biggest tits you ever saw.
No, it's Ishihara, the one we think is a Yakuza guy.
Oh, maybe.
Nice. The investor guy?
The investor.
They didn't send the hot one who did the music?
No. No.
Golly.
No, they only sent the investor with the proposal.
Them boys are smart, but they're pretty dumb.
So let's get down to it. Capsule Monsters. So we're going to set this game in the real life region, the Kanto region of Japan, which is Tokyo, and going inland quite a bit. We're looking at like 50, 60 miles. As we can see on the left, we have the hand-drawn map of what the game world's going to look like. And I've overlaid in red what the final game came out to be. So here we are. As we go through this pitch, we're going to find out how much of these bones were already in place. Just right from the get-go.
We're gonna be able to see what the refreshing on the essay was, or what's that when you do a first draft and then you do a second draft revision. The revisions are.
We'll see what some revisions are down the road, but I really want to make an effort to point out just how much of that first draft exists in the final version, which is quite a fucking bit. And I always find it fun because if we look at our oh-so-classic Kanto map, because we've all played a Pokemon or something that took place in this region of Pokemon, I want you to guess where Satoshi's hometown is.
Ooh, I know.
It's the first town you fucking start in.
Pallet Town.
And you follow his path to the vocational school.
His hero's journey.
Yeah, you follow Satoshi's hero's journey. So what inhabits this world? Well, Pokemon.
Monsters.
Professor Oak tells you right at the beginning of a new game. He tells you that this land is inhabited by Pokemon. Some help people with their daily life. Some are used for fighting. But that's it. It's our world plus monsters out there. And
there's no crime. That's why you can send your 8-year-old out into the world.
Mm-hmm.
To go
There's only
fight.
scary people.
It's some sort of libertarian hellhole dogfighting economy where you just send kids out into the wilderness. But we see up top here, these are all in that pitch. Just, what do you visit? You go to caves, you go to forests, you go to towers, a cruise ship. As your journey is going through this RPG, there's no sort of sense of escalation or danger is a way I should put it. In most RPGs, you're sort of expected, your first level, you're fighting a few rats, and eventually you're going to overthrow some corrupt king, eventually fight God at the end or something. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
I mean, typically the corrupt king kicks your ass at the beginning, and then you start beating rats' asses, and then fight your way back to the
You grind your way to the top. But again, strike two. For a game getting pitched to Nintendo. This is already a little bit weird. Modern day RPG where you're going around they're like, monsters are cool, but we don't know about all this. This isn't exciting. Kids aren't going to want to play a game where they explore a cruise ship or a town or any of that stuff.
Also, they don't want to play as a child. They want to play as some ripped Conan the Barbarian ripoff.
Yeah, exactly. Not an everyman sort of deal. So, Pokemon, huh? These are the first 31 sprites made for Pokemon. In the demo pitch.
Wow.
What we've seen of art from Ken Sugimori around here is also included in the pitch, and it's only a few select monsters that kind of, start as a sprite and then got turned into art. I do love how wonky a lot of these look. Like your Lapras is missing its cinnamon buns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I do like
It's
how
almost there.
I'd always kind of presumed that Voltorb was when they ran out of fucking steam.
No,
but-
he's there from the fucking beginning, boyo. Out of these 31 guys, I will tell you there are only two on this page that do not make it to the final copy. And before you start searching, I'm going to make one very easy for you. It's this guy with the open mouth, because they already had kind of a dinosaur with a closed mouth in your Rhydon.
But
and
the Nidoran thing.
And the Nidoran Nido King and a Nido Queen.
I think the Tentacle was a part of the OGs.
Yeah, Tentacle's part of them. You have Gyarados looking like a fucking eel with
Sandworm.
teeth. And Scyther looks a lot like Charizard, how we'd imagine it, but you can see it has some mantis claws in there.
Ghastly is written as Gasu.
Yep. I think that
There it
is
is.
Japanese. We got it. We nailed it. And then the other one they didn't pick was, of course, Robot Blastoise here.
Oh shit! They made Mecha Blastoise.
They made a Mecha Blastoise, and it didn't make it in.
Fuck, man.
I know.
We didn't even necessarily. I guess we kind of got that with Mega Blastoise and X and Y. But
Well, that's the thing. We live in an era now where there are over 1,000 of these monsters.
Yeah.
And a lot of the things that end up on the cutting room floor the entire way, a lot of them have a tendency to just kind of pop back up, 5 or 6
the
years
top
later.
left one, that guy looks like I think he's from the Black and White generation.
So Voltorb is there.
Yeah, our
is
main-
that the chicken and egg thing? Pokeball for Electrode Voltorb?
No, Pokeball from the get-go.
Okay.
We haven't gotten to our Pokeball slide yet, but they were like, oh, our items in the game are going to be this little two-tone ball. So it was like somebody thought it'd be a really cute idea. Like, oh, what if it's like a mimic in RPGs,
Your treasure chest.
Yeah, you think you're going to get an item, but instead, oh no, it's this shit that looks like a ball
Yeah.
with eyes.
It explodes all over you.
This picture also...
It's self-destruct.
Yeah.
It's a kamikaze.
At this point, it should be worth noting, evolution's not a thing.
Totally.
For Pokemon, just given on what you have at the time.
Never was, never is, brother.
Whoa.
What about Digivolving?
No Digivolving either. If anything, it was going to be considered as a Nidoran gimmick, because we do have like a Nidoran female and a Nido Queen, so it was like, oh, just these monsters might change after a certain level, or you just find a Nido Queen or whatever it's called, and it's a stronger version of what you have. I love this image. I don't know about you guys. It's so fun seeing all these derpy boyos that look so close to the friends we know, and some of them are not changed that much from this till the final product. And it answers one of the biggest questions I ever had as a kid. How do you go from eggs to a coconut tree?
Yeah.
And you have the answer in this image. They're just right next to one another. Like, no joke.
Duh.
Like, as they created more Pokemon, and these ones have, kind of were like, kept floating to the top. They're just like, well, fuck it. Eggs turn into a coconut tree. We can include both of them. Why not? That's just how it happens.
As someone came to the table with like, well, we'll have them evolve into one another. That way we don't have to have like 150 unique sprites out living in the world.
Yeah. And just sort of condense things into like, lines and stuff like that. One thing we should point out as well, not a whole lot of these boyos are cute. Not a whole lot of cute guys. We got a Clefairy.
True.
We got Beta Clefairy down here. That
Not
But it
nearly
looks
as
like
cute.
it's seen war.
It looks
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
it looks like a Cubone that's been placed in a body cast after a Charizard whooped its ass.
But yeah, it's there. The foundation's there, but so much more work to be done. This apparently was the best part of the proposal that they gave, because your old suits, your salary men at Nintendo are like, yeah, we like monsters. Yeah, some of these look cool.
I understand a monster. I've seen Godzilla.
I've seen a monster. I just don't understand an RPG set in modern Japan here. This seems a little bit much.
What is 7 ended up being?
7? This one with the back
Yeah.
turned?
That's Nidoking,
That's
isn't it?
That's a Nidoking, but it's
Yeah.
like
Oh,
it's got
okay.
its back turned to us, so its tail's kind of going in front.
I see. Okay.
But yeah. So what do we do with Pokemon? Well, you capture them.
Yeah!
It's your main boy Ultraman. One of the Ultraman series that came out in the 70s, I at one point had it written down which one, but it don't matter. Have either of you watched Ultraman?
Oh, yeah. I used to have an Ultraman statue.
For real, Zach?
Mm-hmm.
I knew we were friends.
Yep.
I love kaiju shit.
I love kaiju shit.
I even love kaiju shit even more when it's made on a weekly budget.
Yep.
This is why Power Rangers kind of gripped me as a kid and all that, just because it's like, well, you don't have the spectacle of a boom boom big Godzilla movie. You just have a spandex suit and a mask, and he's gonna throw like 4 punches, and that's it. That's your episode.
An
Have
actor
a nice
who's
day, kids.
sweating his ass off
Yeah.
inside of it.
One of the Ultraman series had something called Capsule Monsters, where if they didn't want to break out the Ultraman suit, they had, and to save money and reuse monsters that they had fought, it was basically Ultraman had captured this monster in a capsule, and you could open it, and now you have Monster A fighting Monster B.
Smart writing.
It's super smart writing on like a money saving thing, but
What era is this?
era of Ultraman would be
Yeah.
like 70s, 80s.
Okay, so it's probably a what would you call that? Like two thoughts that like inhabit space and time like side by side.
A thought.
No, like there's like a concept to this, like as me being a big D&D nerd and not much of a kaiju like 70s Japanese weeb, but like there's a concept in this in D&D called the figurines of wondrous power.
Oh, yeah,
which
yeah.
are like these little figurines that summon like a monster or a beast of some sort that can help you out. But it's probably
been staple place in like a lot of fiction and other things like that. But the gamified version of it is that like 2 independent ideas just sort of spring forth.
And I could also see this like being like something like Ultraman inspired Dungeons and Dragons, because like these features didn't come around to like later iterations of the game. And so it's very likely that like someone who was a weeb of the 70s and 80s was like, well, that was cool. Like, how do I put this into the game I like?
Yeah, cool. I rubbed this jade statue, and wouldn't you know it, I got a tiger for the next 6 hours. Mm-hmm. But they mix the concept of this Ultraman Capsule Monsters idea with Gachapon. Cause
Love a gachapon, man.
Welcome.
Love a gachapon.
well, I mean, being an American, I'm always cynical to Gachapon. Being pure American boy, where it's like, well, shit, do I really want to spend 25 cents on a gumball, which I will get immediate enjoyment from, or do I risk getting one of 6 homeboys? And I don't want really any of them, or
Dude,
a ring.
that your mind's in the wrong spot.
Yeah.
I think they were called homies. Just for the record.
We'll throw one up on screen. But Gachapon, huge in Japan at this time, especially 1990. So a staple of Japanese culture. So Nintendo's like, thumbs up on this. We like Gachapon monsters. We like this concept. This is okay. We just don't like anything else other than the monsters. Moving right along. Well, before we move along, we also see the kaiju influence in a lot of early Pokemon designs.
Mm-hmm.
The sprites that we saw on the previous slide were made first, and the art made second. Basically, is a Ken's translation of what sprite somebody else had made. And you see a lot of kaiju influence of like, I don't know, it's a dinosaur, and we're gonna put a drill on its nose. I don't know, it's a dinosaur. It's got a bunch of spikes and some big ears. I don't know.
It's a bear with a fucking...
It's a derpy bear, but it's got an angry thing that's like a parasite onto it. You get a lot of that
And
influence there.
then this one just sleeps around and
Hey.
snores
Oh,
a
put
lot.
He's
a
pin.
big snorer.
Hey, he's a big boy.
And you gotta find a flute to get him to fuck off.
He's the worst roadblock in history.
No, dude, in 2025, they should make it so you have to find a CPAP for him.
Oh my god. That should have been Megasorlax. It just has a CPAP machine next to it.
Pokemon Sleep is strictly like based around like feed Snorlax so he gets better sleep and like accumulates more points for you.
That's cute.
So you can find new Pokemon and their sleep styles.
I'm never going to buy in, but that is so cute.
Yeah.
I know it's free, but I mean...
Well, you have to buy a $50...
How much money do you think that Pokemon bottom line has come from Pokemon Sleep? Was it a free app?
Ooh, I have the numbers for Pokemon Go at its heyday. Not an overall, but I have nothing for Pokemon Sleep. So I
Pokemon
assume
Sleep.
a small fraction,
Yeah.
tiny fraction.
You got to buy a
compared to that.
$50
Bigger than that
peripheral.
Hello Kitty 61K?
Probably.
more than Hello Kitty's movie empire.
Yeah.
But just because you had to buy, like, it's a peripheral that works for both Pokemon Go and Pokemon Sleep. It's the Pokemon Go Plus Plus. Because they already had a Pokemon Go Plus, and then they couldn't think of a more interesting name to give the second peripheral.
That is a salaryman decision. Just add another plus.
Fuck it, put another plus on there. And this one won't be a symbol, it'll be the word plus.
Oh, so it's Pokemon symbol plus word plus?
Pokemon Go Plus, and then the word plus.
Wow. We've
That's
really reached the bottom of the barrel,
crazy.
boyos.
And it kind of tracks your sleep half a way as good as an Apple Watch would.
Just think if,
Imitators. Everyone's an imitator.
I mean, we were talking about Godzilla games a while back. Just think if there was a decent Ultraman RPG that just, I don't know,
Dude.
played like a Yakuza 7 or something, and you just turn-based just beat the shit out of other giant monsters. I'd be all for it.
Yeah.
I'd be all for it. Make it happen. Somebody make it happen. Take my $50.
I think there was
Take my
talks
wife.
of an Ultraman Go. I don't know if it ever came to fruition, but I remember reading about it at one point in time.
Ultraman what?
Ultraman Go. Like from the same company that does Pokemon Go.
Mm-hmm.
I think they had an idea of like, well, if, that one works out, and during the heyday of like, well, this was an immediate fucking success, what else can we do?
Yeah.
There was talk of an Ultraman Go.
I mean, it's,
Gentlemen, there's an Ultraman movie that came out this year.
I know, I saw it.
Ultraman Rising?
No, well, I was thinking Shin Ultraman.
June 14th. Oh, it's an animated movie.
Shin Ultraman
there
was
is-
good.
There is an Ultraman in it. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
Anyway, no, don't be. We're moving right along here in this pitch. So what do you do with these monsters after you catch them? Well, you fight them. One of the concepts that Dr. Bug comes up with really quick is so many of these damn RPGs, much like the Final Fantasy Legend we saw before, are just sort of like your screen is mostly pixel art of what you're fighting.
Mm-hmm.
Or like this top middle image, you could have your monster on the left and somebody else's monster on the right.
But the over-the-shoulder shot is just
It's iconic.
so... It's iconic. Exactly.
It's absolutely
It's
iconic.
on the logo when you start the game up with the
Yeah.
two...
Yeah, I know. Scrolling Pokemon in front of you,
Yeah.
sort of a deal.
Anita Rand versus a Gengar.
Yeah. That all comes from he saw two dogs fighting while people were trying to walk. Like,
These are some also interesting frames to read.
It wasn't the ever so common urban legend that it was bug fighting that inspired Pokemon.
bug collecting and bug fighting inspired the whole thing, Taylor.
But I mean, specifically, his litmus for it was seeing two dogs go at it in the street.
Well, bad choice of words, but Satoshi is very against violence.
Okay.
So when it came to from step one of throwing this pitch together, monsters don't die. They just faint. They just get a little bit winded and need some time to
They get really sweepy.
They go to
yeah,
sleep.
They go to sleep. It's going to be perfectly fine, sort of a deal. Satoshi hated bug fighting. There were other kids who, he was upset that he was making these guides for these kids to go find bugs and then found out that they were bug fighting them. He was basically like, no, these are wonderful little creatures that you're just supposed to take care of. Like, sometimes they eat each other, but I mean, that's life.
You don't make them do that.
Yeah, don't make them do that. So it is funny that eventually he turns around and creates essentially dog fighting for kids in a Pokemon game. Yeah.
With a Donkey Kong wearing a hat.
Oh, it's a
fighting.
Godzilla versus Kong.
Oh, fair enough.
It's a cute
Wow.
little Godzilla versus Kong little image up there that was part of the pitch. Another thing that never made it to the game but was heavily part of the pitch and something that the people at Nintendo didn't really get or care for was you and your Pokemon would essentially be tag team partners. You could fight the other trainer while your Pokemon fought the other Pokemon.
Oh, shit.
Can knock their lights out.
Pal World.
Yeah. So that was something that was pitched, and they were kind of riding on that. And then once we get later in the story, you realize this was never brought up again after the pitch. This was something that just kind of got swept under the rug.
But it was a thought we all had in our minds. Like, why can't my Charizard just, like, Flame Blast Bug Collector?
Yeah.
And, like, end this fight?
Or it's like, my Pokemon's asleep. Why can't I just go and kick that Caterpie and get it down a little bit more health so I can catch it?
Why can't I just whip a Pokeball at its face and then, like, Ash
Why
did
can't I
in
just
the
use
anime?
my gun?
You get aspects of this in the finished game, I guess, a little bit with the Safari Zone. A little bit. The concept is somewhat left over, but implemented wise, it's very different than what this was with you essentially fighting another trainer, dealing basically giving items to your Pokemon, things that are in the game already. You know, as it's released, giving items. Adding debuffs to the trainer's Pokemon would all be things that you do as your trainer part.
Rather than Screech, you would like use a metal.
You
like,
use an
drum.
air horn
Yeah.
to you know, and that's your move as the trainer, and then the Pokemon has very rudimentary at this time. You just have HP and magic. And like any sort of basic RPG, you assume your Pokemon has the option of like fight, defend, magic, or item possibly at this time. So gone are I only have 4 slots to pick my moves. Something that's wonderfully basic, but such an ingrained part of Pokemon for me. It just emphasizes player choice of like, especially if you don't know what you're doing. Because we were all dumb kids who played Pokemon the first time and turned one of our Pokemon into an HM slave that knew like a cut, a strength, a fly, and a surf.
I wasn't
Everyone
even that
has
smart.
that memory?
I spread that shit around and
No,
like
buddy.
wasted.
I kept one little slugger, one little Squirtle, or the raccoon. No, squirrel one.
Rattata?
The rat one. Yes,
Raticate.
Rattata.
Yeah, I wasn't smart enough. I called them Pottons as well. Like I'd heal my Pokemon with a Potton. That's how stupid I was when I was playing Pokemon.
Yeah, I wasn't really big into reading at the time either.
No, and again, these first generation of games don't really tell you what moves do. You're kind of reliant on a guide or just trial and error. And sometimes when you're 8 and you don't have time for trial and error, you turn your Charizard into the most useless piece of shit that just gets you around places.
It just knows stat buffs and debuffs and doesn't know a single attack.
Yeah, I've done that to myself too.
Yeah.
I've done that to myself recently because I had like a randomizer that I've been playing. But yeah. Again, most of our foundations there, lots of changes, lots of differences, but it's you see almost a fully formed idea of what Pokemon will become in this pitch. But the coup de grace, of course, is trading monsters. And this is their selling point of the game.
Man.
Are you laughing at the little Satoshi?
Yeah.
Dr. Bug wants trading Pokemon to be both an integral and fun part of the experience, but also sad because he wants it to feel like no matter what, you are trading a friend away.
I mean,
Wow.
You are saying goodbye to a friend forever. You know, in this pitch, they have ideas of like, you know, your trainer number when you start that new game will be permanently burned onto that Pokemon. So no matter where it goes in Japan, somebody could say that they have Farts Caterpie, and that shall never ever change, sort of a deal.
tying back into this cataloging of bugs obsession he had with as a child.
Oh yeah, it all comes back. I love also when it comes to the trading of Pokemon. No matter what, if you are trading something, your Pokeball bounces and goes into where the link cable port is, as if it's a meta fourth wall break of the monsters physically leaving through that cable. Just something that didn't have to be done, but it's wonderful. And you would think like, this is when you start getting, you know, the money signs start appearing behind the eyes of these salarymen and everything else.
And
You know.
and inversely, like when the American children figured out, like, well, if I just have a friend who has a link cable, we can start a new game, not save.
Yes.
And then I can get Bulbasaur, Charmander, and Squirtle in my party.
We will go into bugs a little bit later, as in glitches and video game programming bugs later.
Are we going to talk about a wild one?
We are going to talk about a wild one, of course. There are a lot of them are wild, Zach. But
Missing one?
Yes. But one of the complications with this trading, because this is one of the first things that when Pokemon eventually is getting developed, this is what they have to nail first. Because everything else kind of relies on this working, because this is you using the game. Otherwise, it could come out on anything.
Mm-hmm.
But the trading is something specifically for the Game Boy, so we gotta make that work perfectly. And one of the big oversights was, what happens if you turn off turn off the Game Boys midway through training or like trading things? And you can duplicate Pokemon easy that way in Red and our American Red and Blue, and even the first games that were released over there. It was something that eventually got patched out, but it's one of those so simple, stupid of like, no, just turn it off when it's trying to save, and when you know it, you still have your Charmander.
Or you brick your cartridge. One of the two is going to happen.
Hey, that's the coin flip you take. But a big emphasis on these are not just creatures, but your friends and your creatures. I am kind of cheating and looking ahead a little bit. Nicknames are not a part of this pitch at all, but it's the overall concept of that. Do put a pin in nicknames.
I never took advantage of that.
Oh,
the nickname.
I only do it in Nuzlocke because it's part of the rule. Zach, do you know what a Nuzlocke is? Okay. So
whoa. Whoa.
It's a hard mode for any Pokemon game you can play. You can only catch the first Pokemon you see in a new area, and that's it. So each new route, town, forest, cave, what have you, that you go to, the first one that pops up is the only one you can catch. And part of the, quote unquote rules for that is, well, you might as well give it a nickname because you're only going to have maybe 20 Pokemon by the time the game's done.
The companionship is going to be a lot stronger than flipping around.
And Nuzlocke
getting a bunch of Rat-a-tats.
Yeah. Nuzlocke are also that if it faints, you just delete it.
You send it into the PC and then ship and then release it.
Yeah, you're playing roguelike with your Pokemon rules, so it's just kind of like, nope, you gotta keep Wordle the Squirtle alive. Don't let him die. Don't let him faint once.
And if all of your Pokemon faint in a combat, game over, you have to start the game back over again.
That's just a way to experience the game. There's no end goal that gets you anything better. It's just like a way to play the game.
It's just a way to play the game that makes it more challenging, because Pokemon is the easiest game, like the easiest RPG I've ever played in both concept and practice. Where
it's a game that's also gotten easier over time too, having played all of the generations of Pokemon. Like, as it continues to go on and as it continues to be a game targeted to children, part of that is like, okay, well, we'll make it easier.
We'll give every experience all is already enabled from the start. Everything gets experience.
Everything gets experience. There are healers halfway through all of your dungeons.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Experience all now. Yeah, I played the most recent one on the Switch, and it was everybody gets experience from a battle
right away.
Kids these days.
I know. Gone are the days where you have to switch
to the
out
second
something.
floor of that whatever pathway to another town and get that HP all from that dude.
Yep.
And then I think that one was just the ones that are in combat get experience.
Yes.
Like, that's it. That's how the XP all worked in Gen 1. Is like you still had to put something at risk in order for it to get experience.
I don't know if it's Gen 2, but Gen 2 has a bug where it flat out, if experience all is put onto that Pokemon in some sense, it basically gets half of the experience extra no matter what. So if you want to level up something really quick, you just have experience all on the Pokemon you want to level up and just
in the battle.
Just have it keep on fighting, and you're like, look at me! I'm cheating the game. I'm getting 2 times experience. I'm glad you boys played Pokemon. I was a little bit worried about. I knew you played Pokemon,
Yeah.
Taylor, and I had to ask you, Zach, like a week back, like, hey, you ever play any of these old games just so I don't have to explain what the base game is? You shouldn't have to. It's the highest grossing media franchise of all time. Like,
I think Pokemon Yellow was the first game I've ever bought at Target that my mom bought for me at Target. She bought Red and Blue for me and my sister because we had just gotten Game Boys. It was really memorable.
My brother and I had to share a Game Boy Color and Blue.
that sounds really rough.
It was.
That sounds really rough for a game with one save file.
A lot of fights in the Roberts household over that Game Boy Color.
Who can play Pokemon tonight?
Mm-hmm.
This is the 1990 pitch of Pokemon. As we can see, very close to the finished game we have, but also missing very integral aspects of what we think of when we think of Pokemon. But as a first draft, fucking home run, right, boys?
You'd think.
Grand slam, right?
Pretty good.
You been reading my notes, Taylor? Because it's rejected.
Miyamoto, no.
There's that man.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's in the Mario clan.
Oh, shit. Oh, shit. Goro's not going to like this one.
Majima.
Nope, not one bit. But no, Pokemon is rejected. It's considered too confusing, especially for the age demographics that they're going for. RPGs are already pretty niche. So, you know, even though you are in the birth year, maybe year after the Game Boy has released, they're kind of like, no, this seems like it's going to be too expensive, too confusing. Not going to sell. We like the idea of monsters. Maybe make something else with monsters and bring the pitch back to us at a different time.
So this is like, what, 92, 93?
No, this is 1990.
Okay.
This is 1990. The pitch is, sent out. And obviously, your Dr. Bug, your rest of your Game Freak team, who are really riding high on this idea being something that can elevate them more than, hey, we made an arcade game for the NES, essentially. Now, maybe their dreams are a little bit crushed. Maybe you gotta kind of look inward and be like, well, shit, what other... Let's pick up some other shit games that we can try to, produce for our company, what have you. They start making deals left and right. Try to get something. The truth of this is what happens to 99% of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Most of them don't even make it to this part, but this is, good ideas, bad ideas.
Most of them don't even get stamped.
Yeah, most of them don't even get to the point where they can be rejected. But Pokemon could have just had its curtains closed here. Nobody would know about it, of course, yada yada. And Game Freak goes on to make, oh no, they made they made Sorry for the Super Nintendo.
Oh, shit.
Or something like that. And, and everyone would have illustrious careers, still make money, what have you, still be printing zines out from now not the Mom's Basement. They have their own little, office that they're renting right now.
They made a great baseball game for the N64.
Oh my gosh, isn't that great? But, as fate would have it, it's Nintendo that rejects this, not Miyamoto. Miyamoto's not in the room with the Pokemon pitch, but Miyamoto and Dr. Bug have kind of been talking back and forth, who's working on what, this and that. Heard you try to get a foot in the door at Nintendo. And it's over a couple drinks that Miyamoto
Isn't that James Dean portrait?
Yeah, look at all these James Deans. I think this one's my favorite though. I like this guy. This guy right here. Grandpa, what are you doing still here? Why are you hanging out with all these super young 47-year-olds?
Standing, too. He's standing, so he's on his way out, but he still wants to have a couple last laughs with the gang before he pats them all on the back and takes
before he
his leave.
sleeps on a park bench,
Because he missed the train.
Yeah. But no, Satoshi and Miyamoto are sharing a couple drinks, and Satoshi, again, he's still pretty bummed out about Pokemon being rejected, brings up the idea to Miyamoto, and, how can I workshop this? And as he's going basically beat by beat like we have gone through the pitch, Miyamoto goes, and they rejected this? This is a fucking gold mine. What is this shit? He gets on his big 1990 cell phone that's the size of a... and he pulls
it out of his briefcase.
He pulls it out of his briefcase, calls up Nintendo and goes, I'm helping produce this. You're making this game happen. Like, this is just an independent company. They're going to go through somebody else who's going to eat all the costs of it, basically. But no, just give them some money. Let them work on this sort of a deal.
We're distributing it.
Yeah, we're when this comes out, we're distributing this.
Sega's gonna fuck us if they pick this one up for the Game Gear.
Absolutely. So Nintendo fires back with, okay, you have to release Pokemon in 6 months then. You aren't the AAA game. You're in that now production line of what can you release in 6 months? We'll call you back at the end of 1991. Well, before you knew it, boys. Before you knew it. One of the other stipulations.
They made a fucking Leonardo DiCaprio movie.
Oh,
Sorry.
Wow! With the Tom Hanks. The other stipulation from Nintendo, other than being 6 months, is you have to change that fucking name. That is the worst name we've ever heard.
Capsule Monsters.
Capsule Monsters.
Capumon?
Capumon, more like Crapumon. Am I right?
Got him.
But also, Capsule Monsters was actually still trademarked by the people who made Ultraman. So they were like, no, we're going to avoid this. So Pokemon, the name is born with the illustrious phrase that we all know and love, catch 'em if you can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's a Mandela effect if you think otherwise.
Yep.
It actually is catch 'em if you can at this point in time because they're making this for the Game Boy still. You know, and you have limited space. So it's assumed your game's only going to have maybe 50 monsters, and we have storage space that you can keep 20 of them. So you can't catch them all quite yet. You're limited by whatever you choose in the game.
Much less gotta catch them all.
Yeah, no, it's no longer.
We're not even encouraging you to catch all of them. There's only a limited amount of them, boys.
We're just saying if you can catch them, go for it. You do you. So before any real time at all, 1991 comes around. During this time, of course, Game Freak had already picked up other projects they were doing for other companies. We see in the upper left we have for Sony, before they go off and release their own console in 1994, they were bedfellows with Nintendo. They created a game called Jerry Boy or Smart Ball.
They were deep bedfellows at one point
they were.
in time.
They were like this, and I'm crossing my fingers for you listening audience.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Jerry Boy down here, we see, I played a little bit of a ROM of it just to have like a feel for it. It's just your generic platformer.
Yeah.
Nothing special. It's developed for the Super Nintendo, which is new in 1991, so that's kind of exciting, getting another in with Nintendo, something else. Hey, we made this game in like 8 months. Here's our product for that.
Shows your willingness to play ball of like, hey, we'll develop for whatever console you throw at us.
And same with Yoshi, which was released on the Game Boy as well as the NES in 91. Simple puzzle game, a simple things drop and you have to match shapes and blocks and all that, like a Dr. Mario.
Or a precursor to Pokemon Troze.
Yes, essentially. But again, while all this you have programmers who are dedicating time, energy, and resources to these games throughout 1991, and it becomes fairly obvious to Game Freak that all that goodwill that they got from a Miyamoto, that little bit of life after that rejection, is going to immediately be snuffed out because we are approaching December of 1991, and we have not even a working trading prototype yet. We have almost no work to show for this chance that we've gotten.
Don't got a demo yet.
Yeah, we don't. We're a year away from a demo at the pace that we're going, sort of a deal.
So here's where the real hero of our story enters: cocaine.
Yeah. So by the end of the year, they have nothing to show to Nintendo at all. Pokemon related. They do have these two games that are. Jerry Boy, also known as Smart Ball, it's got moderate success. Again, we're looking at Quinty numbers where it's selling maybe a couple 100,000 tops over years of it, being on shelves. But Yoshi does surprisingly well.
Mm-hmm.
For being a double release of the Game Boy and NES, it has pre-orders that are somewhere in the vicinity of a couple 100,000 being sold in the first month. And goes on to sell.
It's also a relatively new character in the Mario universe.
Oh yeah, it's got that name brand sort of. it's like you're releasing another Mario game or Zelda game, sort of a deal, where it's got that brand recognition, and also it's not trying to be anything it's not. It's an arcadey puzzle kind of game.
Was this a spin-off then? Because Yoshi was in one of the Super Marios, right?
Yeah.
So Yoshi was already an established character, and now finally got...
And now your name brand Yoshi game isn't a game like Mario at all. It's more like a Dr. Mario, where it's a puzzle game that has a Mario character safely down here in the bottom corner, just to remind you that you're playing a Nintendo game.
It's a rebrand of a already existing game.
But at the same time, it's competent. It's a competent puzzle arcadey game, and it sells copies. And again, we could have closed curtains here. Nintendo could have been like, yeah, no, this was all great, but we're not going to throw...
Well, time is up too, right?
Yeah, time is up. We're not throwing any more money towards any Pokemon thing. You haven't shown us shit at all.
Except some little dinosaurs.
Yeah, except some pixel art a year ago and a really confusing concept that we're still trying to wrap our brains around. But Yoshi sells just well enough to keep them in good graces with Nintendo.
Stays the execution.
Just long enough to where they can finally start showing progress that they've made in other demos and things like that, leading into like 92 and 93, which is also the era in which we get our 151 Pokemon.
Including missing number.
We get it all pretty much in these first couple years. They make it basically... It's open season. If you can make sprite art in the game art, like Game Freak Studios, I don't know, make a fire bird, an electric bird, and an ice bird. Okay, now send it to somebody else. Now you try a fire, ice, and electric bird. Like, they'll start with a concept, like, oh, we need some fighting ones. We need this and that.
What about a pervert who uses mime technology to trap you?
Taylor, don't be so mean
technology.
about Parasect. No,
Absolutely.
I know you're talking about Mr. Mime over here. But this is where you get upwards of 300 different Pokemon created, and they have company-wide contests and polling to kind of whittle it down to the designs that they like most.
Yeah, I see a handful of there that I don't recognize, like the Sawtooth Shark.
Well, you see a couple that kind of get like put on the back burner and pop up, because I think there was a shark one in like Generation 3 on your Game Boy Advance. You got something that's like a mythical deer, which you don't see until like the 2010s, really.
Pokemon X.
Yeah.
Is the legendary Pokemon is a mythical deer.
You don't see an elephant till Gen 2, but an elephant standing up like this, you don't see until, I believe, even a Scarlet and Violet, which recently came out. And as they're compiling all these sprites and printing them off, they're trying to keep things in order of like when, what groups were made then. Like, you'll have entire sheets of just humanoids, entire sheets of just, we're making bugs. We're just throwing every bug piece of spaghetti we have at the wall. But when there was gaps, they would put in a missing no. What we know as a missing no. Because it literally is, it's a missing number. Like, well, Pokemon 55 might be some sort of dog. We'll just throw a missing no sprite on that as sort of just junk data to, at the very least,
It could be the next evolution of this, like, bird with a leak.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't, it could all we'll figure it out eventually. But it's a very organic 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 1 step forward, 2 steps back kind of process throughout all the way up till 1994, where most of the time is being spent on making trading work and how many monsters can we make. Okay, somebody, at some point they come up with types, because before it was, they're monsters. Maybe it knows a fire move, sort of a deal. And then once these types start getting introduced, they have like, well, we need like 3 more electric Pokemon. What can you pull out of your ass? What can you make for those?
A little rat with the lightning bolt for a tail or something.
Oh, just you wait. Put a pin in the rat that everyone... Hey, I'm talking about the other rat this episode.
Whoa!
The different
rat. The yellow rat.
The rat that Walt Disney wish he had. Banked on the wrong rat.
I'm sure that they wish they bought that rat in some time, and well, they never really got a chance.
they might have had a chance.
Oh shit!
We'll put a pin in that.
So
too.
you're saying there's a chance?
Pretty much everything everybody says. Put a pin in that.
Right.
But yeah, so, whittling down monsters, figuring things out, and this is how we get so many of our classics. All these boyos that we could name and all those poker apps. And I'm sure when I'm 85 and I'm in a death, I'm in hospice care and my dementia has fully claimed me, I will know what a Hitmonlee is, but not the ones I love. That's the effectiveness of these designs.
Yeah.
Progress moves slowly but surely as we move into 1993, 1994, just still to keep the lights on. They're still selling zines and articles and magazines, but they're making these games that are not doing great, but doing enough to keep them in the industry and keep their heads just barely above water while they use so much of their talent, their 4 to 5 programmers that they have, trying to keep them retained and keep them into new games.
I guess I don't really understand the relationship with the initial proposal to get this business from Nintendo, that they had 6 months to complete this game, but then it's been put on the back burner to a degree because we're getting years and years into the process.
We're getting years and years into the process, and any normal, if you were making Mario and Wario, just to run you through the design process of just a game, generic game, you go to Nintendo, or Nintendo comes to you, game publisher, and goes, okay, you got to make me a new Mario game. It's going to use that mouse that's in Mario Paint. Come up with something quick. You have 8 months until this thing is on shelves. Good luck.
You have 4 months.
May the odds ever be in your favor.
You have 4 months until we need to start putting it on chips and getting it ready to ship. And
that's typically the process for a lot of these games. And it's only through the good graces of somebody like a Miyamoto and Dr. Bug having the relationship that they do, that they both think this idea of catching monsters is so damn cool, that Miyamoto's able to sweet talk Nintendo to keep on just trickle them some money.
You'll get something out of it.
You'll get something out of it, possibly when it releases. I'll try to push them harder. I'll tell them, hey, they need to start seeing maps and they need to start seeing what battles are going to look like and yada yada yada.
Well, Nintendo's hedging their bets as well. It's not like they're getting nothing for their they're getting a return on investment that is hopefully successful enough that if Pokemon never comes around, they still they broke even. But if
they're getting minuscule money as well, that's the other thing. They aren't getting enough money to fully develop Pokemon. They're getting since Ishihara's from Creatures Inc. is fully involved now as a producer, he's finding ways to make sure that Game Freak can stay afloat. Satoshi, good old Dr. Bug, even goes and gets his dad gets a loan essentially to give to his son. And we don't.
So this is just a passion project. Then.
Yeah, Pokemon's purely
able to do it.
They're able to do it. They aren't really given a set hey, it needs to come out at X date. It's just sort of, hey, work on this in the background and give us updates. And please, by the love of God, if anybody makes a handheld console that can link up to another handheld console, you don't jump ship. Mm-hmm. And there is lots of thoughts of essentially disbanding Game Freak and just having Creatures Inc. absorb it and play by those rules, have different programmers and developers touch this Pokemon thing. There's, it's a tough process. And as we go through through 94 here, we got Pulseman in the middle, another game that neither, I think, three of us have ever heard of. I think there was a virtual console release.
Is it a spin-off of Mega Man?
It's a Mega Man-esque platformer.
Okay.
Not affiliated directly with Mega Man.
Okay, it's not like we gave one of the.
It's not a side character. Yeah. No. It's just, hey, we're making a Mega Man-esque game, and this was for Sega at the time, which I think gave Nintendo a little bit of cold feet. And their Mario Wario, which is just interesting gameplay. You're essentially fucking around and getting a blind Mr. Magoo Mario to the end of a stage. It's like Lemmings in a way.
Yeah.
Where you're placing blocks and having Mario run through the level.
It will become Super Mario Maker one day.
Yeah, it is kind of an early Super Mario Maker, but it doesn't sell well at all because, one...
No one wants to buy that stupid fucking mouse.
Yeah, if you have that mouse, like, cool, this is one of the 3 other games it works for, like...
It's like the Wii Fit board.
Yeah.
Ain't a whole lot that you can do with it. You can see the Ultraman influence very much so in Pulseman.
Oh, yeah, and when it comes to art and design, this, again, all Ken Sugimori. All the music's done by Masuda with the long hair.
Nice.
But
Our boy.
These 3 shaggy-haired jabrones.
These jabroni programmers. After it was almost a 1-2 punch from Mario and Wario and Pulseman. Like, once those projects ended, there was a handful of programmers that are like, okay, well, I'm going to go now, and... because this company can barely stay afloat, and I'm not going to get anywhere here, and you're making me work overtime on this monster catching game with a guy who stays up for 24 hours, and this is terrible work environment. I'm leaving. I'm going to go to Neo Geo and make some bad shoot-'em-up game or something like that.
Wow, Neo Geo.
Yeah, so there are multiple times. I found 2 that were recorded where it was almost their entire staff of programmers just leave, and then you're left with a Satoshi Ken Ishihara throwing him money through the door slot.
I mean, who are you to blame them? It's not like if they stuck around till Pokemon, they would also have a percentage of it. They would have just gotten paid what they got paid to make it, and would be able to like point and go like, well, there's my name in the credits.
Yes.
Like, it's not like it would have made them billionaires to stick around and like.
Well. Hindsight's 2020 as well. We know Pokemon's success. Nobody in the story knows Pokemon's success. And even your lowest programmers on Pokemon when it releases are basically given carte blanche of, if you want to go and work for Nintendo and do other stuff and expand your career, there you go. You made the biggest hit they've ever seen, sort of a deal. But, you can't bet on those things. Everyone thinks their idea is $1 million idea, but you don't know till the rubber hits the road. So... Out of the couple times that the programmers leave, there is I found one instance for like a couple weeks where they had no programmers, and it is just the 4 people sitting on office chairs being like, you all want to play some like Dragon Quest 3, like get some takeout food. It reminds me of like Ghostbusters, like
waiting on the call.
Waiting on the call.
Not even on the fucking computer programming himself.
I think he's sleeping through the 12 hours. But he's trying. He's trying to program when he can, but he's not a decent programmer, and he's also put it on himself to kind of coordinate everyone and everything and try to be the face of this passion project. You're most passionate one about this passion project, even though everyone's already put in so much work between all of those watercolor drawings of Pokemon that we know and love. They are all Ken Sugimori, and they are all made in like 1992. Like, the amount of art of all these boyos that we will never, ever... we've seen sprites of boyos. There's official art out there that was thrown in a dumpster bin that we would never see because, well, we can't keep all these stacks around. We gotta whittle things down. After the programmers leave, and leave that vacuum with just your 4 main boyos in a room sitting around twiddling their thumbs, Masuda goes, I got too much invested in Pokemon. He goes, I've so much invested in Pokemon. I've made earworms that you will not believe. I am never leaving this project. I'm never leaving Game Freak. I will take over programming. Like, put me on the 12 hours that Satoshi isn't programming, and we're just going to go back and forth. I mean, you have that definite, the music swells in the biopic, and finally, they give up Nintendo a call, and they tell them, we'll have this game out by Christmas 1995. We'll have something Pokemon in boxes on shelves, Christmas 1995. And they put forth their wheel to the grindstone. With every bit of progress, there's also a step back. You have to remember, they've been working on this off and on at this point for almost 5 years.
Wow.
Many different hard drive failures and everything else set them back months. And even then, they're touching programming that has had upwards of 20 people's hands on it. So it's very messy. It's a flimsy house of cards that they're adding on to bit by bit.
Sleep-deprived
Yeah,
programmers.
sleep-deprived programmers. So the process of making this game is much more sporadic than anything. I was trying to read up on other things because I'm like, games can't be made this way. And it's like, oh no, they aren't made this way. They aren't made with pick them up and put them down projects over the course of like 6 years.
Good games aren't made that way.
No, no. But you have so many computer failures, so many setbacks, everything else. Big step forward was, again, Miyamoto going to bat for Game Freak, saying like, hey, we're still giving him money for this monster game. They should have a Game Boy cartridge that could hold all the monsters they're going to put in the game. So then that magical number of 151 out of a potential 250, which we'll get to.
They whittled it down from 300 to 250 at that point?
They whittled it down from 300 down to 150. Mm-hmm. But you could have enough storage space in your Pokemon PC for over 280, I believe, at that time. I think 255.
And you're like 10 boxes.
Yeah. So it's the kind of thing where Pokemon goes from catch 'em if you can to gotta catch 'em all now. And you could even have multiples. You could have multiple Charizards that you're trading away to your friends, if you so please.
Doubles is better, triples is best.
Yeah. But it's during this time that Pokemon really takes its form as we know it very, very quickly. I mean, it feels like such minuscule work was done before 1994 on it, but they were edging along bit by bit. But again, it's not a complex game. Each of the Pokemon pixels are about like 50 pixels tall by 50 pixels wide. You only got 4 shades you can work with.
It's crazy.
That fucking battery.
A lot of the sprites that you see in, well, we never got to see in America, but you saw in the initial red and green release of Japan are first drafts. All those boyos we saw in the pitch, like, no, they just didn't change it. They don't have time to change it. Like, it's already coded in there. We can't dig through sleep-deprived code done by 10 people to try to change what a Blastoise looks like. That's just what it is. But yeah.
That explains the several different images you see for the characters. Like when you are seeing them on your list of Pokemon, you have your water type one. That is just the little graphic that...
Like
the 2-bit graphic.
The little seal and the little flower and...
And then you have a different one when you're going into your Pokedex. And then you have a different image, like when you see it. It's that they're not all consistent with the same style.
I mean, you're limited to like how many like pixels you can have on screen at any given time.
Yeah.
So you can't just have a little Blastoise.
No.
And a little Charizard and a little Bulbasaur. You have to have a little flower and a little lizard-looking guy and a little seal.
But it's also important that like even when we break up the Game Boy screen, as we see down here in this Charmander versus Diglett, just to try to get the most out of the Game Boy that they can, 90% of the animation is, only in less than 50% of the screen, other than a bar going down. Like, they're working with what they got. Getting, at the time, the largest size Game Boy cartridge that they could gave them so many more options for other things that are truly Pokemon to us, like Pokedex entries. Suddenly you have a lot more room for space, so it's no longer just like a weird bug you found in the forest. It has like a little blurb about it. You know how much that boy weighs. You know how much that boy's been eating. You know how tall he is.
That's a 7-pound caterpillar.
You know?
You got a weird little Tinder bio for it.
It's things like that Pokemon's not the same if it's released, in its state as is before.
If it's just
all
the
this.
50 Pokemon you could possibly catch and the 20 you can keep.
Yeah, and you don't know, you can't. One of the decisions that was up and heavily debated on with the entire team was, we can either allow the player to nickname every single Pokemon, up to 255 Pokemon in the PC or whatever. You can nickname all of them, or you can have 3 save files.
Whoa.
Bummer. Bummer for me and my brother.
I like that they chose the nicknames, even though I've only used it.
There'd have been a lot less tears in the Roberts household if they'd gone with the fucking 3 save files.
And that's kind of the era we're in the production of this, where it's lots of things that cause a whole lot of tears in Pokemon. Miyamoto's the first one to propose, hey, why not 2 versions of the game? why not 2 versions, and maybe 139 of the boyos are in one game and 139 boyos are in the other, with 11 that either don't have, sort of a deal. And it's an idea that's laughed at by the Game Freak. Your Dr. Bug, everyone else. It's laughed at, and then eventually they expand it, as they do with all this wackadoo fucking game proposal. They go, what if every game of Pokemon was unique? What if we had like 25 boyos in there, and it's just you have the number that's printed on that cartridge, and then you have 25 or whatever different options of what a Pokemon game could be, and nobody knows what they're buying. The game itself has turned into a gachapon.
Interesting.
Which is a bad idea.
Yeah.
You can go wild with 2 versions of a game, which we're going to see 4 by the end of this. But it's something that's so distinctly Pokemon. And something that I believe the quote was from Miyamoto, where it's like, it's a game about choice. All throughout the game. Who are you going to choose to be on your team? Everything else. And your choice starts at which version of Pokemon you're going to buy.
Nice.
It's a brilliant marketing strategy.
Yeah.
I'm sure other people have tried it and it's failed 99 times out of 100. This is the one time it works. Moving right along. We got to talk about how buggy the game is. Just ever so briefly.
Wow. Look at that.
I love this list. I love that you have things like Division by Zero. That's in there.
You can do that in Pokemon?
Your game does that sometimes. And I also like the name of my new band, Hyper Beam Freeze Permanent Helplessness.
Yeah.
Which is a state what I describe as my life, like 22 hours of the day.
Hyper Beam Sleep Move Glitch.
But yeah, it's a flimsy house of cards that's now been completely stretched out to the entire, made to form fit whatever you could fit on this Game Boy as we move closer and closer to 1995. There's Pokemon that, of course, get swapped around, moved out, taken out, and of course that missing no sprite always pops up when you do those fun glitches.
The one that we all know. You go to Cinnabar Island.
Well, no, Taylor. You go talk to the guy who hasn't had his quote-unquote coffee yet. And you say, no, don't show me how to catch a Pokemon. And then you fly to Cinnabar Island and you surf on the east side of it, up and down on the shore.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll get treated with either nightmare fuel bone skeletons of some of the fossil Pokemon.
Never saw that one.
It's a very small chance, but it is in that data because the exhibits in Pewter City.
Oh yeah.
It's sprite work. It'll pull from that sprite work rather than pulling from a missing number Pokemon in a sense. But you also have variations of like H-Poke here, who's the biggest boy at 6,099 pounds.
That's a big boy.
80
tall as hell, too.
80-foot glitch, 3 inches. Like
Godzilla.
It's Godzilla.
How do you fly? The wild missing no thing.
Yeah.
How do you fly if it's the guy teaching you how to catch a Pokemon?
The guy that the old man is an instance that you can't avoid the first time that you walk past him early on in the game, and he will teach you how to catch a Weedle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
After the initial time that can't be avoided happens, if you talk to him, he will ask if you want to see how you catch a Pokemon again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He's a tutorial that you can...
He's a tutorial, but since many weird things happen in that tutorial that do not happen anywhere else in a game, like a different back sprite coming in rather than the player back sprite in the beginning of a thing.
Catching a Pokemon.
You're shuffling through this paper clip and bubblegum house of cards to pull from different things that were there before, and then that's how you get these glitches to happen. But yeah, not a broken game, playable upon release, but there's lots of different things like shutting off when it saves, duplicates things. Glitch City. Any of you guys ever go to Glitch City in Fuchsia City?
No.
I've actually never had a glitch in my game. I can't recall ever having a glitch.
I've definitely had the game freeze on me a couple times with, it could be one of these Hyper Beam freezes, or it could be something like a Solar Beam or Psywave freeze, where It's just like the sound keeps playing, but no animation's happening, and your Game Boy's just gonna play that attack sound till the battery runs dry.
I was too scared to fuck with the glitches beyond the missing no glitch to duplicate items.
And that's the thing. The missing no glitch is one of the only glitches that can actually like, corrupt your save.
Yep.
Which, I mean, I'm sorry, Reese, in elementary school. Like, I know I said, hey, give me your Game Boy. Our one fan, he's our Stan. That's
the one. That's
the one. He's got to be. I've been holding on to the guilt for a long time. You wanted me to show you how to get a bajillion Master Balls on your Game Boy, and then I noticed that your save was corrupted after it happened, and I didn't say a thing, and I got to watch you be bummed out for about a week.
It is what it is.
Woof.
You lost all your Pokemons. But it's not just all these programmers coming in and out and shuffling around this flimsy fucking structure that this game is built on. You have people going in and changing code after the debugging tools have been removed as well, multiple times, because they'll get them for a hot minute from Nintendo, and they're like, oh, wag of the finger, don't touch this game until we give you, the dev tools back. And, what is his name? His name's Morimoto here in the top left. Morimoto is programmer. He's one of those ones that decided not to leave, to stick around. Just because he found the idea of Pokemon kind of interesting, and I think he designed a couple of the monsters, but the one we will always know that he designed is Mew, because he legitimately snuck this into the game. Within dev tools are gone, this thing's getting printed on cartridges within a week or two. And he just sneaks in, he goes and tells his friend Ken, hey, can you draw one more Pokemon? Tells Dr. Bug, who thinks it's a great idea because he's been up for 18 hours and just slamming black bosses. Or what, Boss Coffee.
Boss Coffee. Black bosses are those
Black
Polish
bosses.
beers.
Oh my gosh, dude. That takes me. Do they still make black bosses?
In Poland, probably.
Yeah, you would... I don't know if something happened. They went away from the co-op because of the war in Ukraine, and they never came back.
That sounds about right.
But yeah. But no. Within the final few weeks, they slip in the Pokemon Mew. It's supposed to only be something if anyone data mines the cartridge. Dr. Bug gets the brilliant marketing idea that he pitches to a Miyamoto of like, oh, after this game comes out, we'll do we found one more, and we'll have an event at your Nintendo office, and we'll see how many people show up, and we'll trade them these, a Mew sort of a deal, which is great. If it works, it's a great marketing ploy. We, hindsight, of course, know that's become a staple of Pokemon now, is event shit and all that other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, within only about 10 months to a year, Pokemon goes from essentially a demo with some sprites that is somewhat working and some rudimentary maps to the final game we know today. This is the team in, I believe, 1999 before the release of Gold and Silver. So I don't know if all of these boyos and ladios were around this table when...
And androgynous.
And Michael Jackson-os. I don't know. Not all these people could have been around during the Red and Green development, but there's a few mainstays that we have not yet to talk about. One of them is the game's planner, which is named Toji. And Toji here, there was some art, somebody had jokingly made art of him as a Pokemon.
Yeah.
Oh.
And that's how we get a Snorlax.
So workplace bullying got a Snorlax?
Workplace bullying turned one of the guys into a Snorlax. And that just stuck. It just happened, and then, somebody took the drawing and made a sprite out of it, and that sprite got its way back to Ken. You're getting multiple iterations of who's doing this, and eventually down the line you get a Snorlax, which I think is kind of a cute story.
It is a cute story. It adds to the personal relationship this game has. I know this went through a corporation to be made, being the Nintendo and everything.
Oh yeah.
But that it was started by a young man's nostalgia for bugs and catching bugs, and
This is-
all that. So personal. It's like
Yeah.
you're a part of this. When you hear about all these different things about the story, how it was made, it feels like it's made by you and your friends.
Oh, exactly. I cannot emphasize that enough throughout this. Is if you were to ask me before doing any of this research, I'd be like, no, Pokemon's a completely corporate product, because how else do you launch something like that and it becomes what it becomes? But this is a jam band, essentially, of programmers.
Yeah, that's a good way of saying it.
But yeah, as we wind down into that final year, they're still deciding on which 150 boyos they have. And one of their last hires is this lady named Atsuko. And wouldn't you know it, Atsuko is the reason that we have 3 starters and a Pikachu. Creating essentially the first Rorschach test for children. And what's going to be your starter?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
They had,
because that's what it was too.
They had some ideas.
What did you choose?
Yeah, they had some ideas of these people. It's weird to think about it in the timeline, but we had a Blastoise in 1990, and it takes until 1995 for somebody to be like, oh, we should make something cute that turns into that. Things that you would think would be a mainstay of Pokemon from the fucking
get-go. You think that it would go the other way.
Yes. Oh, make some cute things, and then they'll turn into cool things for the boys, sort of a deal. And this is sort of an opposite, where they had too many quote-unquote cool, tough-looking monsters and needed somebody to come in with fresh eyes and be like, oh, no. Make a cute turtle. Make it cute. Give big eyes, make a cute turtle, make it do a goofy thing.
Put a flower
She was
bud.
the inspiration for the childish touch to it.
Yeah. I mean, it was already you're a child going off into the big world, but rather than being the He-Man, you're essentially catching the He-Man, buff, cool, tough monsters, kaiju and cool looking bugs, and suddenly in this 11th hour you have somebody injecting cute into this, and it just I don't know. I would love to be a fly on the wall. I'm trying to imagine the scene in this, hypothetical biopic where it's just kind of why aren't any of these cute? And everyone just kind of drops the papers and goes, oh shit, here you go. Here you go. We'll see you. Hey, take a 5-day weekend. We'll see you when you come back. Show us what you got. Sort of a deal.
Well, even the great storytelling of your hero's journey with the evolution of the Pokemon, that as you are gaining more experience, they too are gaining more experience and evolving into bigger, badder things. And it's I couldn't imagine the game without that element to it, right?
Yeah. It's something that happened as organically as everything else. Monsters evolving by level was something that was added later than stones, because they were some guys hey, I have this cool idea for a dog. And if you give it a water stone, it turns into a water dog, and a fire stone turns into a fire dog,
or a lightning dog.
And I don't know, seems like a cool idea. It seems like a fun gimmick for this one Pokemon, and then all the light bulbs in the room go off, and before you know it, oh, okay, that's just an easy cheat. A Growlithe will turn into an Arcanine when you give it a stone now, and a Bellsprout, a Weeping Bell will turn into a Victory Bell,
with a leaf stone.
Yeah, it's very sporadic, as everyone is essentially coming to the table and, again, taking out a piece of gum and a toothpick and adding another card to this flimsy-ass house of cards as it just fills in this Game Boy cartridge.
And you can definitely see the Dragon Quest. I know Ryan has heard this rant of mine before, but I do think that there is something very integral to the starter Pokemon of the 3, where it kind of gives you baby's first RPG to it.
Oh, absolutely.
Where if you break down an RPG into its 3 most base classes of fighter, rogue, magic user.
Yeah.
That's represented in the 3 starter Pokemon based off of your gym encounters. And how the game sort of plays out as you progress through it, where you have Bulbasaur, which is your fighter. It's your easiest class from the start and most powerful from the get-go, because you face a rock gym and a water gym where Bulbasaur is strong against those Pokemon. It's easy
pickings, and you got lots of tools like a fighter would have. You've status effects and things like that.
Later in the game, Venusaur isn't as strong as Blastoise or Charizard.
No.
And then, your medium difficulty, your rogue or your skill class is Squirtle, where you have an advantage against Brock in the Rock Gym. Like you're going to be powerful against his Pokemon, and then you're at a wash with Misty.
Yes.
And you don't face like your first hard gym until the third gym with LT Surge. Where
things
now
get difficult. Now you have to rely on other Pokemon you have caught and other things.
At this point in the game, like you've encountered rock Pokemon, and so you should have some of them in your team. So it's harder, but it's not like quite as hard. And then you have Charmander, who like the first two gyms kick your ass.
Yeah,
you already have to have a group of other Pokemon that can help support Charmander to get through those first two gyms. And then the second one is just like, electric and fire don't really like it's a wash.
At that point, you have a somewhat dedicated team, and this is all like everyone knows what a Pokemon is. This is simple, stupid, but at the same time, just from a gameplay perspective, at a game aimed towards younger kids, this is such an easy and fun way to determine your sort of difficulty level.
Yeah,
as well as you can beat Pokemon.
Without
red and green with any of them, without any of this you could
team of Rattatas if you
why
want.
Why not the game is sort of that easy and catered towards that play level that you can make any combination somewhat work, especially when your options are as sparse as they are here. I mean, you have things that different concepts that are added late where they already have their like 10 types, and then somebody goes, I want to make ghosts. And they're like, well, we don't have room to fit ghosts. Well, just 3 ghosts then. I want to make dragons. All right.
Well, we kind of already have one of those in Charizard. Yeah, but he's a fire type.
He's fire flying. He don't count. We'll make.
I want like a T-Rex kind of thing, but like a kangaroo T-Rex.
Yeah, we can do that.
And one that holds a little baby inside of it.
My favorite part about this whole design process, because we keep on going about how what you think the cute monsters would come first, all like your Magnemites and your Diglets that are one thing that turns into 3 things. It started as the 3 things somehow.
Like,
again, independently, like 2 different programmers are like, what about 3 magnets? And another one's like, what about 3 moles? And it's years before somebody goes, well, maybe 1 mole should turn into that. It's weird, but it works. It does what it needs to do. As the weeks tick on in 1995, again, right around the same time that we're having this Mew incident where somebody's trying to sneak in a Pokemon, Satoshi has a revelation about Pokemon that seems so simple, stupid, and should have been in there from the very beginning. He goes, so we have trading through the link cable. We don't have player versus player.
What about fighting?
What if we just... It seems so stupid. We programmed a whole battle system where you're fighting random people in game. Why don't we have like a 2-player, you're facing off against somebody?
You can fight your friend after you've, done all the fights in the game.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a limited amount of fights.
The fact that it's one of the last things to be implemented in the game just tells me everything I need to know about the production of this, and just...
Oh, yeah.
Just the amount of, like, and I love the game. I'm not trying to diss the game with that. It's just, it's all these, you have to flip your coin 8 times, and all 8 times it's come up heads on all these different ideas. And it honestly didn't matter which one happened where, but like, oh boy, as they're getting close to the end of 1995, like, it's a miracle that they managed to have something that could be printed onto a Game Boy cartridge and on a shelf in the first place.
Especially the special one with the battery that they're making specifically for this game.
Yes. Oh yeah. That's a whole other. This episode was almost 10 slides of Game Boy like framework and architecture and everything else, and I went, no. One, I've never done any of this, and I appreciate it, but it's not good radio. So 1995, right? 95. Posters are going up in game stores. There's a small advertisement campaign. Nintendo gets in touch with a couple toy manufacturers to have some tie-in toys. Anime is not even on the table at this point. It's sort of something, if it's popular enough, we'll commission some people to make a show down the road.
But I've been wondering this for the last 20, 30 slides.
Yeah.
Where do the cards come in at?
We're getting there, Zach. We are almost there.
Right.
We're almost there. The point I'm trying to make here is like mid 1995, a couple pots are trying to be brought to boil. Some merchandising, some hype around it. It's not really being marketed as a AAA Nintendo Game Boy game. You have to also remember 1995 is 6 years into the Game Boy's life. It's not the new hotness anymore.
We've got a pocket almost at this point.
We've got a pocket almost at this point, and we have an N64 coming out next year. Like, Game Boy's feeling older and older as things go on. And it's sometime around fall 1995 that these game stores get a call. Hey, take down your Pokemon posters.
No!
Take them down. We'll let you know. We'll let you know if something's going to happen. I know it was already a tough sell because, like, when it comes to selling your game in Japan and a lot of these companies, it's like, oh, no, your corporation or your mom and pop store are taking 100 copies of our game. And with 2 versions of Pokemon, they tried to be a little bit sneaky with things with like, no, you'll take like 55 copies of each. You know, you're just going to have to buy a little bit more of our product, you know.
Don't worry, it'll sell.
Don't worry, it'll sell. We'll recuperate the cost. Have you seen our posters? They are great. They say the game's
There's 2 little monsters.
Look at that.
And 1 kid.
It's a kid on a bike and it's 2 monsters. Don't you just want that monster? This game's totally coming out, and then the posters get pulled, and new posters get put up for February of 1996.
Yeah, I'll say I never seen no copyright for 1995
You
at the
have.
start of any Pokemon.
You have.
Really?
You have. Even red and blue all the way up. Typically, the Pokemon license is 1995, 1996.
Okay.
Whatever year that game actually came out. Because it's one of those weird things. This, I don't know, a question in the back of my mind, like how an egg turns into a fucking palm tree, is why there's a 1995 if the game came out in 96. And this is the reason why. But 1996 comes around. Bramp, bramp, bramp. These numbers of rather than going year by year and how much it sold and making you do the math, I'm just going to increment it. Take this number as end of 1996 in essence as we go moving forward. The first couple months, February through almost summer-ish, are disastrous. Pokemon's not selling. It's on shelves now, but it's almost like, you know, when you go to your local mall movie theater and you're like, I didn't know that movie came out a month ago. That's kind of how Pokemon is. Like, after they removed the posters, changed the date, like whatever little hype was there was snuffed out.
Well, I mean, also, too, like, this is late in life in the Game Boy cycle. A lot of people who have Game Boys may not have picked them up in a hot minute. They might be playing whatever's hot for the Super Nintendo.
Super Nintendo, your PlayStation's been out for 2 years at this point. Nintendo, you know, you're saving your money because Nintendo's releasing a new console all around the world in 96. All sorts of things, different options, but it's word of mouth. Pokemon has a disastrous first couple months, but then it's almost incremental, bit by bit. It's getting up to this 1.5 million units, which is already like, that's it. Like, you haven't broken the glass ceiling in that sense. You know, that's the bad term. You're not making sales records with 1.5 million units at the end of the year, but you do have a hit on your hands. And it's the kind of thing where, with how fast games are moving and everything coming out and so many releases and consoles and everything else in the environment of this world, that's kind of what you just expect. 1.5 million units. Next year will be 0.4 million units.
It'll trickle down.
It'll trickle a little bit. But by the end of the year, and we're going to jump around 96. We're going to jump around each of these years, but I want to get the figures up front on all these. Top selling game in Japan.
Wow.
It's the new hot one, yeah.
Top selling game in Japan, with a Japan that is releasing
Densha de Go.
Your train game?
Yeah.
Probably, yeah. Your train, your. Did you look that up? Did it come out in '96?
I have no clue when it came out.
Wow.
I just wanted to throw out a Japanese game.
I wish I would have thrown it. But no, things like your N64 dropping and your Super Mario.
This could be the same year as like Biohazard. It could have been.
We're gonna take a peek at what the rest of the world is up to, but in a year that you're having a worldwide release of like a Super Mario 64, obviously it's not the best-selling game worldwide because it's only in one market. But when you're the top-selling game in Japan, when you have all this other shit releasing, it definitely starts sending a little bit of waves, and it's. Sorry, I lost a Joe Biden for a second there.
So all these illegals started coming into Japan and they started buying the units.
And we beat Medicare.
They got monsters in their pockets, Jack. They're crumbling across the border with pockets riddled with monsters. And you want to let them through.
So already, with 1996, as this game is selling more and more, Nintendo basically comes down to Game Freak and goes, can you release a third version of the game? With minimal changes. The red and green, your first two versions are very buggy compared to what came after. There was lots of weird out of bounds. You can surf on like ledges and stuff like that. There was some fixes that need to be made. They knew they were releasing a broken House of Cards product here, but
it was selling, huh?
But it was selling, and it was selling like hotcakes. So they go, okay, we're gonna have a third version. It's basically gonna be Pocket Monsters version 1.1. We're gonna call it Blue version. We're gonna clean up some of the sprite work. We're gonna fix some of these major issues everyone's having. It's gonna have, we'll have half of the Pokemon that you could only get in green and red in it, and sort of that's the spread we're gonna go on. But huge controversy because one, 2 copies of the same game already seem like kind of a scam to the average consumer. 3 is a little overkill. And it doesn't help that a lot of the gaming magazines at the time went like, we're getting another Pokemon in the winter.
Thinking like, oh, we're getting Mario
What's different
2.
about it?
Yeah.
Jack shit!
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't know, the sprites look a little bit better. I mean, this is the Venusaur we grew up with in red and blue. All the sprites from the American versions come from Pokemon Blue. But, we could have got this squashed little boyo.
Yeah, we got a more fuckable Venusaur.
But it's word of mouth, and it's also the fact that it's like marketing wise, when you put these two games next to one another and you have a bunch of people like trying to pick out like, okay, what Game Boy do we get? Maybe my friend got red and I'm getting green, sort of a deal. It's a huge gamble that pays off.
2 child households. It's built right in.
Yeah.
One of them gets red, the other gets green.
And you're also capitalizing off of, would it technically be a whale if it's somebody who's just kind of like, you know what? I like my Pokemon Red so much, I'm going to just buy Pokemon Green to get those other 11 boyos that I need. Yeah. Trade with myself, sort of a deal. But yeah, 1.5 million units, not amazing, but nothing to scoff at, especially in 1996. Especially the environment we have with video games in 96 and 97. We don't need to run through all of these, but
I call bullshit on that bottom right. What is that?
That's Riven. That's Riven. That's a PC point and click kind of puzzle or adventure game.
Yep.
Oh,
it just got. It's actually getting a
VR
a remaster.
Yeah, I found that out after I threw this in here, and I was just like, yeah, because I liked Riven. But you have so much, your
Final Fantasy VII.
Your world that Pokemon is released into is this world of 3D, colorful action. Just having 2 game consoles connect to one another is not novel like it was in 1990. You have people playing over the internet with things like Quake. Doom, you have
Age of Empires right up there.
Oh yeah, all sorts of different games. Everything's even if you aren't doing 3D models, your sprite work like your Age of Empires and your Castlevania are just top notch. They look great for what they're doing. And I also have a little bit of Metal Slug here because I'm I'm a sucker. I've thrown way too much money at that fucking game. But gaming is more than just a simple arcade experience anymore. At home, you can have storytelling in gaming. You can have be transported to a new lush environment of world and mechanics and everything else. And in comparison, Pokemon looks downright archaic and feels downright archaic. But still, top selling game in Japan, 6th best selling that year. Not pretty bad if that's your best year, right? Not bad at all.
Not at all.
Not at all. Well, it's not.
Oh, shit.
By 97, we have 7 million units sold.
Mini skateboard made the cut. That's great.
Oh, yeah. Should have been in
Little
later.
tech.
Should have been in later, but I can't.
Vileplume Tech Deck.
Just take me back. Take me back to the era of finger skateboards and people having
They're still here, baby.
They're still here?
Yep. You can go find them in any toys section.
Oh, my God.
Boom.
Somebody
boom.
stop me.
He's got one right there. Ladies and gentlemen,
I got two,
he's
bitch.
got a gun.
Pokemon becomes the phenomenon that we know of it. Even still in 1997, the game has not touched American shores. It's barely being planned for an American release, but you have, in a Star Wars-esque sense, a huge hit on your hands, and you have people scrambling to merchandise this thing. How quick can we get an anime made? How quick can we get? Oh God, we need mini skateboards. We need manga. We need plushies. We need gum. We need cards.
We need keychains.
We're behind the ball. We need to strike while the iron's hot. It's not too often that we have something in its second year sell so much more than its first, just on word of mouth alone. Becomes the best-selling game in Japan again, second year in a row. Second pennant. It's won the second
Nice.
ALDS.
Back-to-back champ.
Back-to-back champs in Japan. And now the second best-selling in the game worldwide.
There's talks of a dynasty at this point.
There are talks. It's more than murmurs, I would say. But yeah, again, only a Japanese market, and it's the second best-selling game worldwide. And this is now... We're into our second year of our N64. You're getting your shit like your Mario Karts and all that other stuff. The only thing that holds it back from being the best-selling game worldwide are the few 100,000 copies of Final Fantasy VII that was released in America and got its worldwide release.
Yeah.
Other than that, it would have got the ring, would have got the trophy, the whole shebang for just a purely Japanese phenomenon.
That's an incredible testament to the market that's there, too.
Yeah.
That the number one selling game in Japan can also be the number one selling game worldwide, but only being sold in Japan.
It's exactly as Taylor said a handful of slides back where, yeah, it's releasing late into the Game Boy's life, but this is the kind of thing where everybody has a dusty old Game Boy around, and when Pokemon's the new thing, everyone's breaking it out again and getting some use out of it. It helps that there's murmurs of a color Game Boy that can now have 56 different colors like an NES, which is, that's big news. Maybe it'll sell some sort of a deal,
Maybe you traded in your old brick Game Boy, but hey, they got a pocket that's right there, they
got
in
a new
stores,
model.
super affordable.
Mm-hmm. Or buy a pocket and you get a Pokemon half off was a lot of things I was reading about.
Did Pokemon introduce to us the colored cartridge?
I
don't think so.
don't think so. It's hard with Game Boy because...
technically, no. Zelda Zelda was gold on the NES.
Yeah. Yeah, different companies would fuck around with different colors for cartridges, but when it comes to strictly your Game Boy... Your Pokemon games are all wacky colors, but they gave your Donkey Kong Country, or Donkey Kong Land, a yellow cartridge for the Game Boy. Game Boy games that had added Game Boy Color features got a black cartridge, like your Link's Awakening DX and stuff like that. And then your Gold and Silver got Gold and Silver cartridges. I don't know why they used gold cartridges, because gold plastic is always so fucking brittle.
Yeah. Well, and it's even like the Tengen games for the NES, like were black cartridges as well, and like weirdly shaped.
I think there was like if you're making a third-party non-Nintendo cartridge, it can't be that gray. It can't look like our cartridge, sort of a deal. It's so much going on. The money is rolling in. We see Dr. Bug here, rightfully with a crown, looking like he's the happiest clam in the whole fucking world.
Looks like they're celebrating at a rainforest cafe.
An animatronic gorilla's about ready to pull out like a birthday cake for him. It's your very special day, Satoshi. Something we didn't talk about in 1996, once Pokemon releases in February of 96, they immediately go to work on what they call Pokemon 2. There's no downtime. The money's rolling.
Really?
The money's rolling in, but they immediately go to work on Pokemon 2. You
gotta strike while the iron's hot.
I'm speculating it's a little column A of strike when the iron's hot as Game Freak. You have all these people around. You have Pokemon, things that were left on the cutting room floor that you could implement in a new game if you start from the ground up and aren't working on 6 years of code. But also pressure from Nintendo.
Yeah.
In that sense of, you have a big hit on your hands, how soon will Pokemon 2 comes out? And they go, as quick as we can do it. Not 6 years.
I mean, they'd already started it. They'd started it before it was a hit, though, too, because I imagine part of it was just like, well, we still have a little bit of runway money from the first Pokemon left over. Let's get to work on 2 and fucking hope that this one is a hit, and then the money keeps rolling in so we can keep doing development.
Within a year of the initial Red, Green, and Blue games coming out, less than a year, of course, for Blue, because that came out at the end of the year, you have Space World 1997, which is Nintendo's sort of little Japanese E3 that they would have just for Nintendo products. And they had a playable demo of Pokemon 2. And it works. It's again, it took you 4 years to make like a proof of concept, but here you go, 1 year you have a proof of concept. It's colorful. It's big. We got a bunch of monsters. We don't even have names for most of them. Some of them are just like placeholder 1, placeholder 2. But holy shit, this train has no brakes at this point. Absolutely not.
The Shinkansen's out of control.
Oh my god. You mentioned Pokemon cards, Zach, so I think we should just briefly mention this is before Wizards of the Coast gets involved, and even then,
they're greedy, grubby little ants.
Even that, and Hasbro, they're just Hasbro now. But Creatures Inc., the company that was producing the Pokemon games, had never really gotten into the trading card game market, and they went, once Pokemon was a hit, and they were sent out to look for somebody who could make like trading cards, they went, oh, we'll do it, and just double up on the money that we're making from that.
Not those people you're already working with who built their entire empire off of making playing card games?
Nope, we're doing it. I don't include any of them, but the offices today of Creatures Inc. are actually like etched in glass, all the Pokemon cards that they had made throughout the years, like on all the walls and shit.
I mean, that's also probably why there's so many like of those hyper valuable rare ones, because they were fucking up so many of them at that time.
Of course.
And so you get that fucked up, weird, off-kilter border Charizard.
My Pikachu has yellow cheeks rather than red cheeks and stuff like that. Yeah, it's the Wild West of production. The anime is also important to be mentioned just because, hey, it's the anime. We'll talk about...
We got it in America.
We'll talk about what things we get to in America here in just a little bit. We're only a year away. Keep your pants on, boys. But
okay.
But
not epilepsy. At
this point in time, Game Freak and Nintendo are considering an American release for Pokemon. They're considering it. The anime is one of those things where they really don't... Anime doesn't do well, especially tie-in product anime. It's not until one of the people from 4Kids comes down to Japan and is going through all their licenses that they had bought that they stop by Nintendo. They see some kids along the way playing, the new hot Game Boy game, Pokemon, and finds out that they're making an anime of it. Hence, we will get a Pokemon anime very shortly in the year 1998. But it's does Pokemon work in the USA if you don't have the anime? Like,
yeah, I never watched the anime.
Like, that's the thing. Or just, the cultural... I mean, we'll get to it because it's a tidal wave of the new pop culture thing. Japan gets this almost drip feed of the games come out. And then, I don't know, like a version 1.1 comes out. And I don't know, we're doing some events and we're giving you the secret, Mew Pokemon. Okay, now we got shirts in stores and you can buy a mini skateboard and yada, yada, yada. Show's coming out, sort of a deal.
We got it all pretty much at once.
Yeah, and we'll get to that. It all dropped on us at once. Pokemon anime came out in April of 97. Just to date things.
Nice!
Yeah.
Fuck yeah!
So what about America, boyos? What about America?
America's sexiest president.
It's America's sexiest president? I know, Jesus, right? That one. My president.
Our forever president.
Lung darts, my
John
president.
McClane.
Beefy, cheesy glory.
Dementia patient, my president. Or Alzheimer's?
I don't know if
It's
gonna
dementia.
eventually.
I believe it's dementia.
I'm sorry, Bruce Willis.
Is he leaving free and dying hard in this one?
No, he's Armageddoning in this
Oh,
one.
son of a bitch, you're right.
This is 1998 in America, my friend, and
Okay.
and I'd rather have saxophone playing Bill Clinton on the Arsenio Hall show than his "I did not sleep with that woman" speech.
I was about to say, I'm pretty sure Saxophone Bill Clinton was a little bit before that, but okay, fair enough.
I'd cheat a little bit. I'm sure this bald eagle photo.
Revisionist history.
Yeah, I know. I'm revising
Yeah,
things.
this 4K bald eagle
This
image
4K
probably-
bald eagle was not 1998, guys. I don't know when this billboard takes place, but it's timeless in America.
I know the one on the far right's pre-2001.
Can we be sure?
I can put a solid date to
Yeah.
when that is.
So Nintendo is going full bore to try to get an American release of Pokemon to line up with a card game release from a Wizards of the Coast, only really chosen because of their proximity to Nintendo of America in Redmond.
Yeah, they're in University District.
Yeah.
Or Wallingford.
So Nintendo of America goes, okay, if we're going to release Pokemon here, because Americans don't really like RPGs, let alone JRPGs. It's a niche within a niche.
It's a new start. I mean, Final Fantasies had done well here.
Final Fantasies had done okay, but Final Fantasy VII was a big hit. But again, going back and forth, Pokemon looks 20 years older than a Final Fantasy VII. Not as cool. Too much cute, they say.
I mean, also Dungeons and Dragons was made here.
Yeah.
It was pretty popular. But yes, in terms of video games.
So at Nintendo of America, we get to talk about what they wanted to do to Americanize Pokemon. We've seen it many different...
They wanted to give him freedom.
Want to give them smoking.
We've seen this multiple times already in this slideshow where your game kind of has cutesy anime characters. I don't know, throw on some like water, throw on some oil painting of some punk guys or with your speedball, like, just make the most generic looking main character of a platformer you can. Nintendo of America wanted to do, because, I mean, they're not changing the code. They're not changing the sprites, in essence, of the game, but they wanted to change box art and what these characters look like for an Americanization, not communicating at all with the people who are bringing an anime over here that has separate designs. They want to do everything graffiti style, which again, in 1998, you're kind of ahead of the curve by a couple years. We have that graffiti urban aesthetic that all pops into everything between like 2000, 2003. But apparently this meeting goes down as a disaster.
I mean, these Pokemon look like the characters from the Jinko Jeans comics you got when you bought Jinko Jeans.
Yeah, I was thinking Spyro.
Oh, Jinko Jeans, Spyro. I was thinking like Jackie Chan Adventures or like your other American cartoons that were like 4 years after this, where everything has this, it's cool and edgy. Look at this little scamp. Like, oh, he's breathing out a little bit of fire.
That's definitely the mascot for some offshoot of Dare telling me not to do drugs.
Because drugs make you look like this.
Get you real goofed.
I don't know. I don't even know what this guy's doing, but he's goofing. Again, much like the pitch in 1990, here we are in 1998 with Ishihara sitting across against a bunch of American salarymen.
Howard Lincoln.
Howard Lincoln and his cronies showing him graffiti versions of creatures that were already like part of merch and everything else that's massively successful. And he says, of quote, like, and I quote, this is Ishihara speaking about the meeting. Yeah, the first time we showed some Pokemon in the US, we were told they were too cute. Staff of America submitted their ideas for replacement designs, and we just couldn't believe the kind of stuff they were proposing. They turned Pikachu into something like a tiger with huge breasts. It looked like a character from the musical Cats. When I asked, how the hell is that supposed to be Pikachu? They pointed at the drawing and said, well, there's the tail. We could have curtains right here. Ishihara could effectively pull out of an American release of Pokemon right here in this room. Because it seems like Nintendo of America is not budging on their, we need to rebrand this and make this franchise less Japanese. But somehow, some way, that coin flips up heads again.
Shigeru Miyamoto puts some pressure on.
Probably put some pressure on and just kind of like, look, you guys are going to save so much money. You don't need to reprint materials. We've had art since 1992 of this shit. Like, just use that. Just save yourself some money and some time.
It's selling really well over here.
It's selling so well. We don't know how it's going to do in America. Maybe it'll flop, but this way you're not spending more money to make shit designs. Yeah, so an agreement is made. Pokemon's going to be released in America in September 98 to coincide with the September release of the anime and the September release of a card game, making a three-pronged punch to the American youth.
Right at the start of American school
that was planned. Right at the start of the American school year when kids will be getting together and trying to figure out what's cool. But
know your consumer. Just know your consumer.
Hey, they knew their audience. They knew who they were selling to, and it's going to work. But before we can get into 1998, I know it's like I'm doing another intro again. We need to talk about the December 1997 Porygon incident. Zach, you know anything about this?
No.
So the Pokemon anime is a huge hit. I mean, by April when it starts, Pokemon's already, starting to make waves, and by December, it's
hottest show on TV.
It's the biggest shit ever. Everyone needs to buy a Pikachu. Buy. There's an episode of the Pokemon show that was only aired once. Because
what was the Pokemon show before you get into what was aired? But what kind of show was it? Was it the anime?
Yeah, it was the anime.
It's a one-for-one with what we got in America.
Yeah, it's a
mostly.
one-for-one.
It's the original anime.
Yeah, it's the original I Want to Be the Very Best anime.
Gotcha.
But yeah, there's an episode, much like most of the episodes of the anime that focus on a Pokemon because it's the easiest story writing ever. It's a Kangaskhan episode. It's a Kingler episode. The Porygon episode was your stereotypical stock plot of we need to go into the computer to fix a problem. The real problem of the episode is 20 minutes into it, when Porygon's fixing a problem in the computer, it flashes red and blue lights alternatively more than 20 frames a second.
That's what you mentioned earlier about the
epilepsy
seizure.
Yeah. This creates This is the part of the biopic, or this could be its own fucking it's an episode of Grey's Anatomy. Kids around Japan are being rushed to the hospital and nobody knows why they're having seizures.
Because of the demons that came out of the TV from the Pokemon show.
It's not, there are news broadcasts of that night where they don't know what's going on. It's not.
This is, okay, when we talked earlier about how fast Japan got from A to B, they missed the whole step of somebody publicly putting out their fast repetition colors and causing
shit.
Well, so this is a disease that, like, for the longest time we thought, that person's got a demon in them.
But no, they know what epilepsy is in Japan at this time, and they know photosensitivity can trigger it, but it's the kind of thing where
you don't know how many kids are epileptic yet.
You don't know how many kids are epileptic.
You know what a really good test is.
It's a multi. There's many factors that go into this. One, Pokemon is the biggest shit ever, and every kid is watching it. So you have a bigger pool of people who might be potentially epileptic. Two, they're kids. This cartoon aired right after school got out, typically before parents got home as well. So it's a show that kids are rushing home to sit as close as they can to the TV. and to watch every frame of it because god damn it, we love Pokemon. God, bye. And then parents are coming home and finding their kid like collapsed or convulsing on the floor and rush them to the hospital. It's like a day or two before they figure out it's the Pokemon episode. And the worst part about this is, once the news finds out it's the Pokemon episode, they are airing clips from the Pokemon episode, which cause more people to have seizures and send more people to the hospital.
Yeah, in the nightly news, it's like, this was causing kids to have seizures.
Yeah. It's absolutely bogus.
This is crazy.
The Pokemon show is immediately pulled off the air for 4 months. There are written reports, because one, this Pokemon anime has nothing to do with, Creatures gave somebody the licensing. Game Freak is hands off all about this. But you have like from Dr. Bug's autobiography, he's just kind of like, I got a call at like 11 at night that the Pokemon episode caused this panic that's going on. And he's just like, I got to get to the office. I know other people are going to get do we apologize? Like, we had nothing to do with this show. Do we need to, they have to come out and be like, Pokemon's not dangerous, guys. Totally not dangerous. We'll talk to the animation people. They'll never do something like this again. This is something that
I'm sure Nintendo's blowing up the phones at the Game Freak office right now.
Oh, absolutely. Just coaching them on, like, news reporters are going to be there in about 30 minutes, and you just need to just be like, hey, we have nothing to do with that show, but, deepest sympathies to the families. Nobody dies from this.
We're sending every child in the hospital a Pikachu plushie.
Yeah. But it's the kind of thing where we could, again, even though a deal with America's made, this could kill Pokemon. This was a worldwide story. This is when most Americans first heard the term Pokemon.
Yeah, we're still not even fully out of the satanic panic yet.
Oh, absolutely. We'll get into that, Taylor. People aren't thinking Satan immediately when it's just on your Dateline nightly news in 1997 that, like, a Japanese cartoon caused a bunch of seizures.
But there is still a, like, hysteria of, like, the media's influence on children.
Yeah. Yes. The media is out to get our children. Obviously. Yes, there is that. But for somebody who's not drinking that Kool-Aid, it's still a scary thought that, oh, fuck, we need to more regulate what's on our children's cartoons. We need to have this and that, which things were still a little bit lax in Japan. So you have a lot of public service announcements coming out there, just kind of like, hey, kids, we knew cartoons started at 3 usually, but now we're going to start cartoons at 5. So you could watch them with your parents while your parents are home. And also, hey, maybe sit back maybe one more foot than what you're sitting. That's great. Pikachu loves that.
Is that
Pikachu's a big fan of sitting pretty far from the
That's what this
TV.
top right is a public service announcement that's just kind of like, hey, kids, we know you love Pokemon, but, maybe limit your cartoon time to only, like, 40 minutes a day. Sort of deal.
It makes Pikachu feel pretty sick when he's sitting in front of the TV too long.
Yeah, Pikachu and Ash are really sad that so many of you got hurt.
Oh, this was fan mail to, because of course, Pokemon's a big hit, so you have a lot of Pokemon fanzines, and you have fans of your Pokemon franchise and your show being like, it's been 2 months and nobody's told us if Pokemon's coming back. The title of this one in the big bold letters is Pikachu Did Nothing Wrong, which I think is funny.
Absolutely.
Because
it's Porygon's fault.
Porygon! We know who did something wrong. This created a stigma where, just in its wonderfully weird Japanese way, Porygon, I believe, has only shown up like 2 or 3 times tops in the entire anime series after this.
Let my boy go.
It's just blacklisted for being part of the episode that gave a bunch of people.
He's on the no-fly list.
Don't want to remind people about what he did. But yeah, this has the potential to kill Pokemon as a franchise. Mm-hmm. Completely. Worldwide, Japanese.
If Pokemon was an American franchise and this happened in America while they were trying to export it to the world, it probably would have.
If like, episode 6 of the last season of Game of Thrones gave everyone fucking Crohn's disease.
Yeah, as we were trying to like launch a massive Game of Thrones campaign in the UK.
Yeah. But yeah, regardless, 1998 rolls around, and we only have a couple years left on this. I know this kind of gets repetitive as we keep on going, and we see numbers like 20 million units, and it's hard to kind of visualize what that is. But by 20 million units, you are touching Tetris numbers for the Game Boy. You are in the top 5 at that point. It's been the 3rd year of this thing, and it's selling more and more every single goddamn year. It's like the fucking Greek myth of Midas. Like, everything Pokemon touches is something sellable, and it's selling great no matter what it is. It could be a fucking tech deck, could be pencils, doesn't matter. Slap a Pokemon on it, it's gonna sell. But yeah, the American release, all in September of 1998. You could not have a coordinated, more aggressive marketing campaign towards kids than to throw all of this shit out at once, just right at the start of the school year. What a time capsule it is. And I know this is an only image podcast, or, with Zach throwing in a GIF every now and then. To go back and watch these Pokemon commercials from around that era where it had just released, they market it like it's a kaiju movie, like the monsters are coming, sort of a deal. Like, try to hide as much of the Japaneseness and cuteness of this show as much as they can. This is similar to the blister pack that I got from a Costco.
Yeah.
Which, again, only helps reinforce, like, hey, get yourself a Game Boy Color, and only for like $20 more, you get a Pokemon game, you get yourself a link cable, you can have some friends, you get yourself a strategy guide. You get everything you need all in one bundle and package.
Tells you where to get Pikachu, because it's pretty fucking hard to find in that first game.
That, actually, there is a story behind that. They wanted to, when they were like designing encounter rates and everything, they, of course, as with everything, the theme of this whole story, they didn't expect like Pikachu to be the mascot.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where they're like, oh shit. Oh, this is...
fuck. We backed ourselves into that one.
Yeah, we made our mascot really rare. Luckily, it's in one of the first areas and isn't, like, hidden 20 hours into the game. But still, like, if we knew better, we would have just kind of thrown it on that first path you're on.
It would have been as easy to find as Pidgey and Rattata. Rather than, like, you have to grind for 2 hours before you go to Brock.
And even then, it's kind of useless when you get there. Here we are, top-selling game in Japan, 3rd pennant.
Dynasty.
Back to back to back.
And thanks to a big American release that took on, we are now number 1. We got the trophy. We're coming home, boys. The general consensus at this time, not the David Duke you're thinking of, Taylor.
You sure?
I'm pretty sure.
Not Grand Wizard of the KKK?
It's a different David Duke.
Okay.
I've looked it up. But yeah, Pokemon in this time in 1998, you have to remember America has also gone through like the Beanie Baby craze and everything else. So suddenly when this big franchise comes out and it lands, it hits the ground running in America. It's you can't avoid it at any point. It's now a part of pop culture and your life. You have investors telling you need to buy Pokemon merch and buy Pokemon cards. You cannot avoid it whatsoever. And even when you're flying on a plane, even when you're getting your $3 million of jet stuff, this is in
You ever been on one of those birds, the double deckers?
I've never been on a double decker bird.
For like international flights?
It's powerful.
I think
Yeah.
But I've never been on one.
Is
it comfy? Do you is that just like crew cabin up on the top basically, or?
No, that's first class.
Oh shit.
First class is up there, and then the peasant or whatever seating. It is 3 rows of 3 seats each.
Ooh.
For like 5 sections, I want to say.
Just a big old boy.
It's a skyboat.
Mm-hmm. So don't mind me if we rapid fire through some of this. We got to talk about Game Boy sales. This thing's not only selling cartridges, toys, cereal, everything else. It's selling the console that it's on. Game Boy.
Gotta have it. It's like the beginning of the pandemic with the Switch. and Animal Crossing. Like Nintendo,
Yeah.
like just got so fucking lucky that they dropped Animal Crossing right at the start of the pandemic. So everyone's like, well, fuck, I gotta play this game and I gotta get a Switch to do it.
Yep. And this happens with Pokemon. After you of course, very obvious with your graph, you can see the Game Boy mostly flatlining after its 7th year. And then after Pokemon, you see we more than double our sales as we go into the rest of the year. Yes, compounded with a Game Boy Color coming out and a Pocket and a Light and all this other stuff, but at the same time...
Damn near a Game Boy Advance, too, at this point.
Oh, that comes out in 2001.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's something where, due to the graces of how mountain of money you're creating with your Pokemon brand, that you effectively doubled the life of a console that was considered on its way out anyway. Which is wild. It's something that, hard pressed to find a game like late in the PlayStation 3's career or 2 career that ends up selling more. Because usually at that point, everyone who's going to play the game that comes out already has their thing.
Yeah. No, it's usually like, I mean, that's why you target like launch titles and things like that. And I mean, occasionally there is a mid-generation game that ends up moving units. But never usually one towards like the tail end. I mean, the best example I can think of is like The Last of Us for the PlayStation 3, but that didn't really move a lot of units. It was just sort of...
Did it also release PS4 at the same time, or
No, it later got a remaster for the PS4, but it was like in this like less than a year before the PS4 dropped.
Okay. Yeah, just wild stuff. I mean, you cannot imagine the amount of money that's good old Dr. Bug is swimming in at this point. Good graces to Nintendo. The world is essentially his oyster. He could do whatever the fuck he wants after this. He could stay in the game and see how far Pokemon could go. We have a Pokemon 2 on the way. Speaking of Pokemon 2, so Pokemon 2, which would be called Pokemon Gold and Silver, again, put almost immediately in development after the release of Pokemon, possibly even before, just taking what came from the cutting room floor and trying to fit it into a new, fresh start. Now you can actually take away some of the toothpicks and bubblegum that are in your house of cards. This game is set for a 1999 release in Japan and a 2000 release in America, and as of 1998, I don't have time. I don't even have time for a sequel to run through all this, because this game is my favorite.
Really?
This whole Generation 2 is my favorite version of Pokemon games. It's just a refined Generation 1. It's more colorful. The addition of 100 extra Pokemon's kind of fun, even if some in the base game are really just backloaded to the very tail end of the game. But I like things like the real-time clock, even though on actual hardware that just drains your battery from step 1, which is kind of a bummer of Pokemon. Like, if you have a red and blue cartridge lying around, that battery maybe lasted you about 4 or 5 years, but if you have a copy of Pokemon Gold and Silver, that battery's dead, like, within a year or two of you turning it on.
And then you have to replace the battery, and all your Pokemon are lost to the sands of time.
Which is no fun. But again, as they're developing this for, 3 years, almost non-stop, much quicker, production time frame than what they had before, because they could be laser focused in on it. I included a couple Pokemon up here that just sort of made the cutting room floor that we will see in different versions later on down the road. Some of them in your Game Boy Advance games, some of them waiting all the way until your Sword and Shield when you get an evolution for Farfetch'd.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so that is a Farfetch'd evolution.
Yeah, that is a Farfetch'd evolution. But it's at this time with, give or take about 6 months to a year for the Japanese release of Gold and Silver, Dr. Bug goes, I think I'm tired of running now. I'm tired of developing games. I've been touching Pokemon for about 10 years here and been an integral part of it, staying up way too late, trying to fix other people's codes, trying to write my own codes, trying to add, find fun things for people in the town to say, I'm tired. I just need to step away. And he asks Masuda over here, Music Masuda, who cut his hair.
No.
What a bummer.
You went
It's
corporate.
a bad look. It's a bad look. He goes corporate, and he goes, Masuda, you've already been programming this, and you make all this music, and your heart's in Pokemon. Just take over from here. And Pokemon Gold and Silver are the last games that have good old Dr. Bug Satoshi here as a developer. From here on out, he's a producer. He's the CEO of the company, Game Freak.
Yeah, he's an EP.
He's an EP. He's making sure that his employees are paid. He's making sure that there's, communication with creatures. But after essentially quitting development on Gold and Silver, he just takes a sabbatical. He just turns off his computer and walks out the office, and I'll be here next week, but this is in your guys' hands now.
Wow.
Which is so weird. I've been searching for a metaphor for it for a long time. A sports metaphor maybe, where you've already won. You've won the championship.
I got one locked and loaded for you.
You do?
I got a backup one.
You've locked, hypothetically, you won a championship 4 or 5 times. It's the last game of the World Series. You're up by 10. It's the 3rd inning. You're not even up to bat. You just turn to the manager and go like, yeah, I'm done.
This is the Jerry Rice season with the Seahawks.
You just give up?
No, he just played one last season with the Seahawks to sort of a wet fart at the end of a
Didn't he go to the
illustrious
Raiders
career.
after the Seahawks, though?
He did a camp with someone, but he never actually suited up in preseason or regular season game for him.
Huh.
I would compare it to, take it or leave this person in history, but George Washington. He's the only person to have been given so much power and then to leave it right after a revolution has occurred. Because he could have set a precedent to be there forever and to control the United States. He could have set a precedent to control Pokemon and have it forever be his idea. But he stepped away and left it into the hands of other people to maintain that idea.
Even if you think it's the public's best interest that you stay in charge of the country, or, think of how many fans, because, Dr. Bug here knows how many people he's made happy with his Pocket Monsters. He's seen how much joy and delight he's brought into the world. He's made the game that he wanted to play. He gets, as we saw him in the photo in the very beginning, he's playing his own game. He's not dev testing it. He's
just playing it for funsies.
He's playing it for funsies. He's reliving he found a way to bottle up his nostalgia, and sell it to the rest of the world, and they enjoyed it as well. And it was just, what could have been if he stuck around. Maybe Pokemon doesn't last for another couple games. Who knows? But it is what happened. He takes himself a sabbatical and just kind of returns as purely, I'm wearing the suit and I'm making sure all the money's flowing in the right direction, but leave me out of this game production. 1999.
Pokemon Yellow! Pokemon Stadium!
The bar keeps on going up. It's almost like that second wave. If September through December of 1998 for America was a changing moment as we saw the first wave of Pokemon crash upon our shores, 1999 is that tidal wave that's 3 or 4 waves back behind that first wave.
The heavy sumbitch.
Pokemon is unavoidable at this point. It's a movie, it's a TV show, it's everything everybody's watching. We're having boom, games that are Game Freak is even tertiary involved with Stadium, or completely hands off with Pokemon Snap and Pinball and stuff like that. It's become a dynamo of its own money making.
The second year of Pokemon has hit the United States
President!
of America.
But yeah. There was so many news articles about a preacher somewhere in the heartland of America. You found the one with the mullet,
though. I like that.
I found the one with the mullet that points to Pokemon cards and goes, Satan! Mm-hmm. These are the work of Satan. But there are news articles, and I tried so hard to find a picture of this preacher who set a blowtorch to a bunch of Pokemon merchandise and outside his church, made his kid tear up a Pikachu doll.
Wow.
Yeah, it's classic.
It's the kind of thing, it got so big that, I mean, where do you go from here?
We're the most brain-rotten fucking country on earth, so it makes
Yeah,
sense.
that's par for the course for America. Did you see our billboard with Jesus and the hamburger?
Gold inside of the Burger King Pokeball. Loved that.
Yeah.
That was a good offering.
That was... Hey, Burger King tried to sell gold leaf-plated steel to kids, and it worked!
You couldn't keep it in stock.
We're actually going to see that image again coming up, because I forgot it was in this slide, too. Because there's so much Pokemon shit to keep track of.
No.
Oh my god. I didn't hide a Saddam Hussein in here. Or did I? Uh-oh. You have entire task forces in the US and France that are cracking down on people making bootleg Pokemon merchandise, bootleg cards, all this other shit. You can't escape it. Mm-hmm. You have whole stores now open up for Pokemon.
There's the Pokemon store. They're still open today.
They're still open today. We're drowning. I mean, it's just how quick this can happen to a worldwide culture in just the span of a few years. It's just mind-boggling to me. But yeah, as we reach the end here, as of 2024, we have just about 47.5 million units, putting it in a nice, safe, just about 18 to 19 million units more sold than its second place with Tetris for the Game Boy. And even though this figure may seem small, it's the 13th highest selling video game of all time. Now, we don't count mobile games or anything like that, but when you're going up against your Fortnites and your fucking Grand Theft Auto 5 and your
Halo 3,
all these fucking giant ass launches, your Minecraft, shit like that, it's wild that for a brief few years we had this phenomenon sort of just wash over culture, change pop culture in general. All these boyos are still doing Pokemon stuff. I know this is sort of a mirror of an earlier side, but we have Dr. Bug here, who has significantly less bags under his eyes after he's not having the word. He got some rest.
He reverse aged.
He reverse aged. He looks younger than ever before. Still the CEO of Game Freak, director, credited as producer on just about any Pokemon product that came after him leaving game development. He definitely got more involved when they did like a Fire Red, Leaf Green, and a Let's Go Pikachu Eevee. Any games that do that first game in Kanto again. That Gen 1 style. He doesn't take a game developer role, but he definitely tries to be more hands-on with it. We got Ken Sugimori! No longer looking like a round-faced baby boy, but looking like somebody's dad.
Yeah. That guy used to play bass in some band.
Oh my god. He is still doing a lot of design and artwork for Pokemon, even though they've gotten on so many other graphic designers and artists. Everyone sort of adheres to a Ken Sugimori style, making somebody like the career path of somebody who wanted to start off drawing like manga and comics, maybe political cartoons, got his career start making fun of somebody else's bad art, and is now having people emulate his.
Incredible.
We have Masuda, who went from making music and all that for all the games, and eventually filling in, being the stepdad who stepped up when all the producers left. Masuda ended up directing all Pokemon games from Gold and Silver all the way through, I believe it was X and Y, before one of the new talents that they hired in kind of ended up taking his place. But he's still working at something called the Pokemon Company, which ends up being the main distributor for all Pokemon merchandise in Japan. And he's got a fun Japanese title of like Chief Creative Fellow, so he's doing well for himself. Ishihara is the grandfather that shows up at all sorts of Pokemon events.
Here he is fondly thinking back on Big Titty Pikachu.
Just smiling. Just a smirk, wishing, oh, we could have had Big Titty Pikachu, or I could have hit, what's his name, Lincoln?
Howard Lincoln.
Could have hit Howard Lincoln straight across the face for trying to do this to Pokemon. He is he was CEO of Creatures all the way up until about 2013, still producing all sorts of different games. Game Freak doesn't just make Pokemon games. There's a couple independent. They try to branch out and again farm in new game developers and stuff like that. But yeah, he just sort of facilitated as president of both Creatures and the Pokemon Company, just making sure those printing presses are still running and printing out as much money as he can for this piece of shit. Miyamoto, look at this son of a bitch. Well, he's
so
Miyamoto. He was their wonder kid turned into their superstar, turned into their continuing aging superstar to now president of Nintendo. And yeah, well, you know, he definitely gambled right. He stepped in at the right time to help create something that was very much an indie game that became a worldwide sensation. Sometimes you just got to be the right person at the right time and know the right people to get the ball rolling on some projects.
And I mean, good on Miyamoto for having the foresight to like leverage the social capital necessary to keep pushing this this game like to the finish line.
Yeah, because I mean, if we go back and we remember the development of this, you know, from your 1990 all the way up till your 1996 of it coming out, you're releasing this game in a much different world than what you started in. And I don't know. All it took was a little bit of support to keep it going. I end this slideshow on this desk. Picture. Back again. Back at the desk with this Eraserhead Laserdisc. Back in this moment of time where this incredibly tired, worn out man who's spent at least 8 years trying to make it in this industry, not succeeding as much as he'd like in the beginning, and at this point sitting on one of the biggest piles of money that, you know, bigger than he could have ever imagined, and willing to have the life imitates art and art imitates life in all sorts of wonderful ways. And I could not think of a better example than the development of these first few Pokemon games. So thanks for listening to my TED Talk. We'll be passing around a hat. You can donate if you want to. But yeah,
that's a good episode.
Thank you.
Dude.
I'm Ryan. Thanks for listening to this.
I'm Zach.
I'm Taylor.
I'll catch you later. I don't know. How do we end these things?
I don't know. The ending
I just
is so
cut off
stupid.
mid-sentence. Chain noise, chain noise, chain noise.